my server. Boop. Hello, Gent. We're going to be covering, as I said, the Human Rights Watch report. All called "All My Dreams Have Been Erased," which is about, as my title so obviously says, um, as my announcement so obviously says, the displacement of Palestinians in the West Bank. So that's gonna be fun, and we're here with Shakespeare.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, well, all your dreams get to be erased for a second time, Jim. So
Okay.
you get to remember everything. You get to remember more
Okay.
bad things.
So let's see here. Okay. So whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I don't know if you
Okay.
wanted me to start or whatever. Fine either way.
Yeah, go ahead. You can start.
The Israeli soldiers came and told us to leave. No one told us where to go, just to get out of the camp. My fear is that what happened in 1948 will happen to us here. I have an inner belief that we won't be able to come back ever. Nadim M., displaced from Tulkarem refugee camp, March 26th, 2025. Nadim M., a pseudonym for a 60-year-old father of four, was forced to flee Tulkarem refugee camp in the West Bank of the occupied Palestinian territory in January 2025, when Israeli military forces raided the camp and stormed his house. He told Human Rights Watch that Israeli soldiers restrained him with zip ties, searched his property, and then ordered him and his family to leave, warning them that if they turned to go to the left or to the right, they would be targeted by Israeli snipers who were deployed in high places nearby. With no clear destination and no information about available shelters or humanitarian assistance, Nadim M. and his family found refuge in a local mosque that had opened its doors to displaced residents from the camp. On January 21st, just 2 days after a temporary ceasefire was announced between Israel and Palestine, armed groups in Gaza, the Israeli military launched Operation Iron Wall, a large-scale operation in the West Bank that involved Shin Bet, Israel's security agency, and border police. Senior officials claim that the operation targeted militants in refugee camps in the northern West Bank governorates of Jenin and Tulkarem. The operation emptied the camps in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nashams of virtually all its residents, making it the largest displacement of Palestinians in the West Bank in one operation since the 1967 war. 10 months later, the camps remain empty, with approximately 32,000 residents displaced. Since then, the Israeli military has demolished 850 homes and other buildings across all three camps. Nadim M. and his family have not returned to their home and have been struggling to live elsewhere in the West Bank.
Okay. And so, like I said, Envy and I are going to be reading through this report together. Very important on the West Bank and everything. And so, what I want to sort of highlight here in this particular chart is the silhouette that you see, right? This is as of the 31st of August. So it's much higher now. But you can see the amount of people, right, that have been displaced from Jenin, Tulkarm, and Nur Shams, and are mostly refugees. Again, these are people that have never been able to return to their homes since the Nakba, right, in 1948, and technically also late 1947. And so one of the things we get are these sort of like testimonies from people that say, no one told us where to go just to get out of the camp. There were drones circling around, right? We could hear the sounds of destruction. And then my fear is that what happened in 1948 will happen to us here, right? And that's by Nadim, who was mentioned a bit earlier. And again, these numbers are staggering. Like this, it's multiple pages. So if they are forcibly expelled from their homes, left with what they can carry, right, and all this stuff, it's uncertain, and I would say it's uncertain that they will ever get a chance to go back to their homes, at least in any real way. I was not able to take, like, here we have Anud saying I was not able to take anything with me, just my ID and my purse. The soldiers pushed us out of the house. One of the soldiers said, you don't have a house here anymore. You need to leave, by Layla. I have an inner belief that we won't come back and we won't be able to come back ever. Right. So this is Human Rights Watch stating the following, right, as well as from the Council of Human Rights at the UN. So the OCHA. So the Israeli government carried out war crimes. That is what Human Rights Watch is contending. Crimes against humanity and ethnic cleansing during its operations in the northern West Bank. Okay, so, and I'm going to read some actual text in just a second. Let me see here. Okay, so this report examines the Israeli government's conduct of Operation Iron Wall from its start in January 2025 through July 2025, and the resulting mass displacement of Palestinians from 3 refugee camps in the northern West Bank. Human Rights Watch found that Israeli forces committed forcible displacement in violation of the laws of occupation under international humanitarian law that amount to war crimes. Human Rights Watch also found that Israeli forces committed the forcible transfer of population and other inhumane acts as part of a widespread or systemic attack directed at a civilian population, which are crimes against humanity under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Israel's action also violated international human rights law, which remains in effect in the West Bank. One thing I just want to sort of note as we're sort of looking at this is the name that they gave it, right? The name being Iron Wall, right? And so why that's significant is because the concept of the Iron Wall, I mean, Avi Schleim has a book that sort of goes into this, right? This is something that comes from the most extreme form of Zionism, right? Which was called revisionist Zionism. Revisionist because they wanted to revise, right, the map of the land that was going to be allotted to the state of Israel. They wanted everything, they wanted both sides of the Jordan River. They didn't want all of what was then called Transjordan, but they wanted both sides of the Jordan River, right, as well as southern Lebanon, et cetera, et cetera. But the Iron Wall concept also comes from this idea that Jabotinsky talks about, like, one, Jabotinsky is not at all worried with calling himself a settler colonialist, right? Like he saw this as colonialism, right? This is even Herzl. This is something colonial, etc. But that unlike the more liberal, I guess one could say, Zionists, um, they didn't think that Palestinians, the indigenous people, would ever, the revisionist, the more right-wing side, never believed that they would, willingly be okay with a Jewish state being created amongst them. So the concept of the iron wall is the force, right, that will have to be applied in order to remove, right, the Palestinians, right? Like that's what the Zionist movement should do, instead of sort of the more liberal state creation of what did end up happening. Although, obviously you have the Nakba. But what's important as well um, is that uh, the fact that they named it this at this particular moment in time, right, speaks a lot to, sort of how they're operating, and also kind of like what they're thinking, like their thought process is about this, right? Because if they're invoking revisionist Zionist, phrases and ways of thought, that means that they are trying to displace, right, as many people as possible, right? So they are just, and Jabotinsky's revisionist Zionism is part of the same line of Zionism that like is encapsulated in the Likud party and all the right-wing parties of the state of Israel.
I wanted to bring
Yeah,
something up because Jim said in chat Netanyahu's father was a Jabotinsky secretary. Is that true?
yeah.
That's okay. That's very interesting. Though it makes sense.
Let me just, and I apologize. I just need to find my. There we go. Yes, hello, hello. It's good to see you, Planet. Yeah, I don't know about the buzzing. I honestly don't know what on earth that could be.
I don't know what the buzzing
Maybe.
could be either because I can't hear any buzzing from you on
Oh, you
my
know what? People
side.
people are saying that you're really low. Let me raise your volume a bit. Okay, now you should be good.
Yeah, but I don't know what the buzzing is because I don't hear any buzzing from your mic through Discord. So
Yeah, yeah. I just put up Envy's voice a bit more. So what else were you gonna bring up? I apologize.
oh, I was just bringing up what Jim said that Netanyahu's father was Jabotinsky's secretary,
Yeah,
which
like yeah.
I feel like makes sense. Makes sense. That it makes a lot of things make sense.
Um Another thing too is that the movements, right, the two particular paramilitaries that were associated with the revisionist movement were the was the Lehi and the Irgun, which both were considered terrorist organizations in their own time, but also by the British, etc. But also and committed massacres like at the scene, it's Yair, yeah. And then Dear Yassin, and then also at Tantura, which I've gone over before, although that was also done by Hahagana, which is like the more respectable, viewed one, I guess. But the other thing I would also want to add is that like these come from pre-state establishment things that then become solidified once the state of Israel is created. And the first kind of person that gains power with revisionist Zionism as their sort of ideology is Menachem Begin, right? So still low. No. Oh, you know what? Let me turn off the music. That also is probably not helping. Here, let's see. Let me see. Can you speak again, Envy?
Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, I had my mic muted. I thought I unmuted it. I guess I didn't. Guess I did.
Is that better, Planet? Because I don't know what.
Jim says yes. The British military creates them. Their actions during the Nakba was classic British counterinsurgency tactics.
Mhm.
Jim also
Which is
says village burning and massacres were what was taught at Sandhurst Military Academy.
makes sense. Um, so just to and then to quickly go from that, like another thing to keep in mind is that um, the International Court of Justice gave its advisory opinion in October of this year, right? Which is added to the advisory opinion of the court of June of last year um, on the obligations of the state of Israel um, in relationship to the occupied Palestinian territories, which would be the West Bank, which is the main thing of this report, and Gaza. So it's what the court said is that, quote, the court, quote, cannot fail to observe that Israel's conduct in the occupied Palestinian territory raises serious concerns in light of its obligations under international humanitarian law and international human rights law. Thus, the court reaffirms that Israel remains bound by these obligations and is required to comply with them. End quote. What? Oh, goodness gracious. Thank you so much, Omega Star. Wow, 18 months. 18 months. Amazing. And just to remind everyone on my end, I have a stream dono goal that if you do exclamation point dono, you can either do so via Throne. There is a thing there, and that's the progress bar you see. You could also go to my Venmo or my Cash App if need be, or leave me a teep. Leave me, which is it's just like a word in Chechen that means like a clan. Um, you can also leave me a tip by going to my Twitch page, and then there it will say like leave me a tip if you'd like to do that. Um, Oh no, I let me turn off the other one that's doubling. Okay. So good to see you, Megastar. Thank you so much for the subscription. So I'll just read to the end of this page because everything seems pretty short. So what was found in the June decision of last year was that the only thing Israel can do in the West Bank and Gaza is leave legally. Like under international law, they have to leave. The only thing they can do is leave. They cannot claim self-defense. They cannot claim any of these things. It's already been the advisory opinions have already been shown to be the case. Um, Human Rights Watch between March and August of this year interviewed in person and by phone 31 displaced Palestinians from Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nor Shams refugee camp, and analyzed and verified open source information and satellite imagery. In the months prior to Operation Iron Wall, low-level clashes took place between Israeli security forces and Palestinian fighters in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nor Shams refugee camps. There were also small-scale clashes in the immediate days leading up to and during the operation in each of these two refugee camps. On January 21st, the Israeli forces carried out a massive raid on Jenin refugee camp, deploying Apache attack helicopters, drones, bulldozers, and armored vehicles to support hundreds of ground troops. So again, like when the state of Israel and the United States uses rhetoric of like, oh, invasion or whatever, they're the ones doing the invading. Right? Like Venezuela is is not invading the United States. Mexico's not invading the United States. Nobody's invading the United States. And the state of Israel too. It's always been that the state of Israel or the Zionists, right, will launch what some people will wrongly call a preemptive strike, like in the 6 Day Wars in 67, or otherwise known as the June War, and then claim, oh well, we have to retaliate in self-defense when there is a response, right? And so those are the things to keep in mind.
Also,
But
before you continue, Jim goes on to state Colonel Charles Caldwell's Small Wars, which include a chapter unveiling village burning as the basis of modern counterinsurgency, is still taught today at West Point. Don't know about Sandhurst.
well, I will say one thing, and that is that there was a book, and I have a copy of it, but I don't know where exactly. Um, and it's this book that talks about counterinsurgency using different case studies. And it was found that Israel conflates anti-terrorism and anti-insurgency like it essentially does not know anti-insurgency, like true anti-insurgency tactics. It just only knows anti-terrorism tactics. And so it was weird to read that chapter because it's completely incongruous with the rest of the book. But it's like the other ones are like the American version, the French version of anti-insurgency. It's the whole thing about counterinsurgency and warfare and global warfare since blah blah blah. And it's like Israel's is just that doesn't know what counterinsurgency like as a thing is. Um, so just something to also keep in mind. Um, so they carried out a massive raid on the Jenin refugee camp. What I want to note is the Israelis have been trying, and they really like there is this ire that they have towards Jenin in particular, because it was the scene of one of these massacres, right? Acts of ethnic cleansing. One might even say, using the language of international law, acts of extermination, um, which were committed against people, even if they posed no threat to the IDF. In fact, they will make up all these stories about, oh, well, we only see this angle and blah, blah, blah. Like, if they gave the same amount of, whitewashing to Palestinians, literally, like, it would, it just be a completely different story. But because it's only on the side of the Israelis, where people are like, oh, well, you can't say that they did it because this angle, that angle. It's like, we've seen it from all different angles. The famous incident, or the infamous incident, was of a man in a wheelchair who had to use his arms to move the wheelchair, right? Who had a white flag and was, you know, uh, brought to an unnatural end, put it like that. So um, that's just something to also keep in mind when it comes to this as well, right? That like they really hate Jenin, right? Like this is one where and remember, they've already destroyed the roads here. They've done everything they can to try to take away as much to bring about conditions that bring mental and physical harm upon the inhabitants, to then cause them to leave, right? To make them self-deport in a way, you know, considering everything, right? Uh, Israeli troops forced residents from their homes amid active military operations. Residents who spoke to Human Rights Watch said that they saw bulldozers demolishing roads and buildings as they were being expelled. Similar operations took place in Tulkarem refugee camp on the 27th of January in nearby Nur Shams camp, which Tulkarem is it's part of the northern West Bank, but it's closer to it's like right on the western sort of border, if we can even say that, of the Green Line, right, between the Palestinian occupied Palestinian territory and the state of Israel, following the same pattern of displacement and destruction. If you want to pick it up from.
I wanted to say before we continue, I don't know if you were making a reference to the stuff we were reading the other day, but yeah, it seems like like the tactic of the like a similar thing that's happening in America, where they are making life so unbearable for certain groups of people that they are forced to leave, if not explicitly deported, made conditions so horrible that like people are fearful of their lives, fearful of what's going to happen to them, where they're going to go, because these people being deported, we don't know if they're being deported even from whatever country they immigrated from. I don't know if that's the case, because I know obviously there was the with CCOT, Obviously, not everyone who went to CCAT, I don't think, was from um um fuck, blanking on the name of the countries. Uh, was it El Salvador?
Yeah,
It
CCAT
was.
is in El Salvador.
Yeah. I don't think everyone who got sent to CCAT was even from El Salvador.
No. And that's why when I did do a stream on this, I talked about the principle in international law of non-refoulement, which is like you can't just send people to some random country that they have no like tie to, they have no way of like living essentially. So that is against the international law. So
Witnesses said soldiers moved systematically through the camps, storming homes, ransacking properties, interrogating residents, and eventually forcing families out. One woman for Nur Shams said that her husband, and their 14-year-old daughter waited in terror inside their home and watched as Israeli soldiers used heavy machinery to destroy their garden wall. Before ordering the family to leave their home and exit the camp, during the raid of Nur Shams camp on February 9th, Israeli forces detonated an explosive device at the entrance of a family home, blasting the door open and killing 21-year-old Rahaf al Ashquar and injuring her father. And then this is a photo of it says two people with disabilities, including an older man, are assisted by two other men during the forced displacement by Israeli forces from Tulkarm refugee camp in the northern West Bank on January 28th, 2025.
and then here's that picture for the people on my stream.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like and again, this is something that there is no compassion. There is nothing, right? There is nothing there that is, the people that say, oh, they're doing this out of like this, oh, trying to, um, you know, sort of do a compassionate mass deportation. There's no such thing of that. And you can see as well, like if you look at their shoes, right? Like this is what I was talking about also, that they've already sent in these bulldozers into, this is Tutkahem, but if you go up to Jenin in particular, you can see where every street looks like this because before they used to be paved, but they destroyed all of that, right? With these huge like machines. So, um,
Jim says you can see videos of the IDF doing this stuff. The way the soldiers move sloppily, not checking corners, they don't think they're in danger at all. Yeah.
right. And so, and please feel free to, if you want to say something in the chat or whatever, that's totally cool. Um, in my either Twitch or YouTube chat, that's fine. Under Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, Israel, as the occupying power in the West Bank, is prohibited from displacing the population and is obliged to protect, except temporarily in these are very narrow circumstances, by the way. Like the people have to be in imminent danger for something that, then they could be allowed to return to. Right. But as we know, with Zionist ideology, the idea of people coming back and returning that are Palestinians, sort of upsets a lot of that ideology, right? So, namely, when evacuation is required for imperative military reasons, right? Like that is to say that the battle has to take place here. But the thing is as Norman Finkelstein has said, there have been no battles, right? Like in Gaza, there are no battles, right? Like they're not fighting against an armed force like in a conventional warfare, right? But there are no battles of anything, right? There are just massacres, right? Like the Flower Massacre, like et cetera, right? So it shows that it's not for imperative military reasons. It's to remove people from their homes and to effectively ethnically cleanse, right, um, the area, and to ensure the safety of a civilian population. So if there is like a fire, if there was an earthquake, if there was all these other things, then the occupying power would be justified in asking them to evacuate, right? But the thing is that even that evacuation, right, it can't be done in the way how they're being forced out, forced out, right? Like they will just send soldiers in, right? And then, a secretary every now and then that, got a little bit too bored at work, right? Um, so even if one or both conditions are met, international humanitarian law strictly regulates how such evacuations must be carried out. And I know on my stream, I've gone over particulars in international law. Like I have, my books and all these other things that I can sort of go through. I don't have them on me right now, but like we've gone over that. Like it particularly states like you have to give them warning. You have to let them know where to go, what to do, and already have something set up for them to go to. You can't just say, "Oh, you have to leave," right? It breaks my heart. Well, IDK, what else to say? No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's terrifying.
Yeah, um it also, I think, must be noted from going over what we did Friday of America. It uses similar language, and also of the UN report we went over. Um, they already um, they may not be considered to be committing a genocide in the West Bank, but with their already genocidal treatment of a certain group of Palestinians, it is it's very clear this is like a from stuff like this seems to be like a total thing and not just it's not just like they I don't know, they just want the land necessarily. It's that in Gaza they just want to kick all these people out. They don't want them here anymore. They want it all to be I don't know, Israeli or something.
And also, I'm just gonna put this in the chat. If you'd like to help me out, uh, or anything, you can go to my throne. We have a dono goal for this stream. Um, it's $100, and I'll just leave the link right there. And if people want to go to it, or go to my Twitch, or do exclamation point dono, or go to which will have my Cash App, my Venmo, etc. And also you can go to my Twitch page and tip there as well. So if you have PayPal. Even if one of both conditions are met, international humanitarian law strictly regulates how the evacuations must be carried out. I'm sort of wishing I would have kept my, because I have quite a bit of this stuff like on hand, but I don't remember which binder I have them in. But anyway, moving on. Um, the warring party must evacuate people safely, give them access to food, water, and proper accommodation, which is why I said they already, if they know something is going to happen, hence why they need to evacuate, they have to make the conditions for them to be able to live somewhere else temporarily, right? It can't just be, you just push them out. And allow them to return once hostilities in that area have ended. But the thing is that it's the IDF conducting the hostilities, right? And that's what makes it so, you know, I would say,
I have a question
mhm,
about something.
yeah,
Um, I assume would proper accommodation include stuff like um even if for people who are like able-bodied, would it be providing accommodations to those who aren't able-bodied to help them with transport and stuff like that?
yes,
Okay, well,
yes,
yeah, I was about that up because in this we see these people above. We see the two people, and they have to be helped by. I assume these aren't Israeli soldiers helping them, so it's
right,
I
right.
mean, yeah.
And this actually goes to another article that I sort of have been reading and, using for my own research, um, is that in the Journal of Genocide Research, which is again for my field in genocide studies, is like leading journal. It talks about different techniques, right? That like propaganda, like Hasbara stuff we'll talk about. And so um, one of them is this technique number one actually falls into what we're talking about, like the way how they would justify it, right? Quote, the denial technique of defensive obligation operates by framing large-scale violence as both a legal right and a moral duty, a justified necessity. The accused is entitled to retaliate, and this retaliation is, unfortunately, unavoidable. The technique relies on and synthesizes two distinct frames. We are acting in self-defense, and we had no choice. It is a form of what Cohen and I think I cited. Uh, uh, I want to make sure that I don't want to give the credit to the wrong Cohen. Stanley Cohen, that's right. Stanley. I haven't. Okay. Uh, the accused does not deny killing occurs. However, he assigns a different meaning to the deaths, usually a euphemistic war, a euphemistic one. It's a defensive war, not a genocide, right? So,
I
mhm.
I wanted to say it's you the beginning of what you said. It's not just a moral right. Like it's just good, you know. This needs to happen regardless of the law. That, like you said, I'll also frame it as a legal necessity, which is why I'm glad you're here because you know a lot about the legal stuff, and so it is it is important to note that Israel isn't just acting, um um morally bad, but legally they're fine. Uh, they are going against laws in place, against things that are in place. It
Mhm.
is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will bring up some more passages from this article because I do think it's kind of helpful um, to like really just explore how like everything that's happening is like there is no husband no husbandist, right, has any standing to say any of this stuff. Like again, I'm part of the or association, right, that voted of all the major scholars, right, to officially, right, as academics to say we're calling this a genocide in what's happening in Gaza, right. And so like all of our research, which is also the journal that's um, that is published by the International Association of Genocide Scholars, is the one that runs this academic journal. So displacements that do I already read that, I believe. No, I didn't. Displacements that do not meet these conditions and are violations of international law, and if committed with criminal intent, are war crimes. Right, and this is why this does tie back to what we were reading the past. Was it yesterday or the day before?
It was
The
Friday,
day
so the
before.
day before.
Yeah, yeah. When we were talking about what's happening in the detention centers, right? Like they went to show intent, right? Because then it shows that these are crimes. Like what's happening in the detention centers are crimes against humanity, et cetera, et cetera. And also, excuse me, how this also shows intent, right? When forced displacement is committed as part of a widespread or systemic attack on a population, excuse me, thus reflecting state or organizational policy. Also, by the way, the people say, well, it's just some commanders and it's not this and it's not that. You had the Minister of Defense, right, saying, you know, lo hashmal, lo hazon, ein maim, ein delek, right? Like no food, no water, right? No electricity, no gas, right? Like no stuff like that, right? Like if we have them saying it, they keep saying it, right? There's nobody, no matter how many, no matter how lone of a box, right, a Hasbarist denialist might be, it's already been shown that these things are done with intent. So, and it's a systemic state thing. It can constitute a crime against humanity. These actions also may also be considered ethnic cleansing. the reason why I think it's like it's a term that we use, but the problem with ethnic cleansing is that it was used as a euphemism for genocide, but it's seen as like a lesser version of it, right? Because it doesn't necessarily include like what most people think about genocide, which is where they think about the suffix, right, from kilos, right, from to cut or to kill, right? So um that's one of you know, but so they'll say it's ethnic cleansing, but it's not the other. And it's like in my own, like I've already argued this here in my own stream, I believe that they are, you know, they are overlapping, right, constitutive things, right? Like one doesn't happen without the other, right? So, but again, ethnic cleansing is a non-legal term, non-legal. So this is not something that is used in the international, legal system. That is to say, it's not seen as being like, oh, a lesser form or whatever. It's something that is used precisely because, right, it was used during the Yugoslav wars, right, during the Bosnian genocide. So, policy to remove an ethnic or religious group from particular areas, quote, by violent or terror-inspiring means, end quote. There is nothing else you could say that the armed forces, the police, the border police, right, et cetera, right, all of these things, right, are all like it's not just a bad it's not a few bad apples. It's a whole rotten tree, right? And it essentially has been rotten even when it was just a sapling, right? Like it's always been rotten. So in all three camp raids, the Israeli military failed to make meaningful steps to ensure the safe and dignified evacuation of civilians. Instead, they instructed abrupt orders to leave, they issued, I should say, either given by soldiers on the ground or broadcast via loudspeakers mounted on drones. Right? Like, that is just horrifying to me. Like, the fact that they have these drones, which are always surveilling, right? Like, all Palestinians are always being surveyed. They're like, but to have it being like to leave your home, right, is, yeah. Um, all the residents who spoke to Human Rights Watch described the humiliation and fear of being forcibly removed from their homes, unable to gather their belongings, and uncertain if or when they would be allowed to return. In one case, Israeli soldiers in Tulkarm refugee camp prevented a man who uses a wheelchair from taking his more functional electric wheelchair. So they are literally, he has an electric wheelchair that would give him more mobility, right? That would let him, right, actually, one, not have to exhaust himself by having to, because we also don't know if he has other conditions, right, as well. Like it's just, this is all we know. And so, because of that, he was not able to take it with him, even though he needs it. In the breach, which again, it's like when things are medical necessities like this, not allowing that is, also considered war crimes and crimes against humanity. In the brief minutes before people were given to leave, some residents said they only managed to take their immediate belongings or just the clothes on their back. And so if you fail to have your identity card, right, if you fail to have all of these things, then they will hold that against you as well. So that's like another thing that also needs to be understood as well. Like if they don't have something on them that then they're going to be forced to show, right, then, oh, well, now we're going to send you to a prison, right? So
Also, Jemps said in chat, they're putting this out because there is no explainable military necessity for it. Which is
yeah,
like, yeah,
there is none.
yeah, yeah.
There was no military objective that needs to happen in one, a population that is under occupation, and two, in refugee camps.
Jemp also says disabled people are also given specific protections under the Geneva Convention and other conventions.
Right. And the protocols, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll read this last paragraph and then you can go on page 7. The Israeli military failed to provide camp residents with timely, consistent, or clear instructions how to safely evacuate. So they failed. They failed to do this. Therefore, going back to the earlier paragraph, therefore, right, these are crimes against humanity. These are war crimes. Right? They did not do this. Therefore, we must conclude from the evidence so far, right, that these are war crimes and crimes against humanity. In Jenin refugee camp, Israeli soldiers or orders delivered through drones told residents to exit through one point nearby Alde or roundabout, where the military set up a makeshift checkpoint. The Tulkarem and Nur Shams camps, no designated exits were provided. Instead, residents received instructions based on their location within the camps. Residents described fleeing under the watch of heavily armed soldiers, drones flying overhead, apparently tracking their movements, and witnessing the widespread destruction of their homes while they fled. So, again, they are forcing, right, them to go through one point, right, which puts a whole bunch of people at risk at one time. But also, you also have the discontinuity of what happens in Tulkarem and Nur Shams, where you have them saying, well, here, you have to go out this way. But the other commander, right, or whatever, the other soldiers over here are going to say, oh, well, no, you should go out of this one, right? And so then this leads to people saying, they were trying to do the wrong thing. That is why we, committed other atrocities, right? Let alone that after they left their homes, right? Which again, if they were truly there to do something beneficent, why destroy their homes? Right? This is the thing. This is why intent can be understood in these actions. So Human Rights Watch found that repeated and unlawful displacement of Palestinians from their homes and places of refuge in Gaza since October 2023, Israeli authorities created a complex evacuation system and the designation of so-called safe zones for civilians. Despite these measures, Israeli forces unnecessarily put displaced people in harm's way, which has amounted to the war crime of forced displacement and crimes against humanity. Forced displacement is a crime against humanity, right? And that is both if you make the conditions of life so horrific that people leave on their own accord, right? Because they know they can't stay, right? And also, right, telling people you have to leave and never allowing them to come back, right? So, therefore, by comparison, the Israeli forces that emptied the 3 West Bank refugee camps of their inhabitants in early 2025 did not make such efforts. So, in Gaza, they said, oh, you have to evacuate to the south, to Rafah, and then to Al-Mawasi, right? But in the West Bank, they don't do that. They don't even pretend as the Israelis do in Gaza. Here they just say scram, right? So
Jim says it's also a violation of the right to free movement.
yes,
Yeah, no. I don't
which is
know
part of
what.
the UN Charter.
Going back
Sorry,
to
go ahead.
what Jim said, that there's no explainable military necessity for it. I don't know what military necessity it is to destroy um, 3 separate groups of people's homes. I don't know what military necessity you could justify for that.
Right, and this is why, going back to the article, right, is that the self-defense frame that Israel will use in these cases um, is I mean, it's rhetorically quite effective, right? And that's something that even this article notes, right? Um, because, and I'm quoting now, it appeals to the universal moral intuition that it is ethically right to use force to protect ourselves and those in our care. The problem is those in one's care would for an occupying power would mean the Palestinians in these refugee camps. So that is where the self-defense thing just is gone. Like there is nobody can claim it's for self-defense. It's just not a thing that Israel has ever cared about. It's not a thing Israel does. It just likes to use that excuse. The intuition is institutionalized in legal forms, both at the individual level, where self-defense is a shield to the charge of homicide, right? Which is why you see so many, particularly white men, young white men, getting away with homicide. And also at the state level, where and this is something I've mentioned before, Article 51, right, of the UN Charter, which is the right of a country to defend itself against, right, an invasion against an occupying power, etc., right? Article 51 of the UN Charter permits a state to use force in response to an armed attack. So if they're being attacked first, right? But remember, Gaza and the West Bank are occupied territories. So they're not a foreign state that is attacking, nor are the Palestinians in these refugee camps starting any form of attack upon the IDF of, definitely not of any significance, like in order to warrant Article 51. The self-defense frame also positions one party as the innocent victim of an unprovoked attack from which it is blameless, right? And this happens a lot when this is why the language around the 6 Day War, right, is, oh well, Egypt was amassing its military by the Israeli border, therefore Israel did a preemptive strike. It's like, no. They started the war, is what you're saying, right? Like, when it's Israel, it's a preemptive strike. When it's anybody else, it's, incitement to be attacked by, whatever. Hello, Moano. Welcome in, welcome in. It's good to see you. So, again, this is why Israel is not an innocent victim. In fact, it cannot be a victim in this case, like legally speaking, because it has all forms of control over the Palestinians and their movements, etc. Which is blameless, and in an asymmetric conflict, which is what this would be, that is to say, there are asymmetric warfare tactics being done. It's not a conflict. This helps to obscure that this party is the more powerful actor and can in fact choose the level of force with which to respond, which is exactly how it is. Palestinians have very limited means to defend themselves. The state of Israel has a legitimized, right, military industrial complex, right? They can go out and do this in the name of the state. So, and again, the fact that they can do things like, the reason why that this proves this, what Dr. McDoom is talking about, is that in Gaza, they did use the language of, oh, we're going to tell you where to go. These are safe zones. The fact that they don't do that in the much, in terms of, very occupied, very, much more restricted population in the West Bank, right? They get to choose when there are spikes of violence and when there are others, more long-term violence being taken, right? So that is why you can't claim that Israel is doing anything in self-defense. It just is not.
Jimpt, before
So
you continue, Jimpt says Article 51 only applies until the Security Council has a chance to respond to REATOR, international security, and it only applies in case of attack or imminent attack from other states, not non-state actors. Article 51
right,
is an abrogation of Article 2 that states cannot engage in aggression against each other.
right,
Restore. Okay, sorry. Reator was restored and restore international security. I was like trying in my head to
right.
figure out what you meant. Thank you, Jay.
No, yeah, and then that's why you also have the fact that also when it comes to self-defense in the UN Charter as well, they can also uh, call on other states to help them in their self-defense,
Yeah.
right? So this is where, and it's interesting because the book recently is coming out. I don't know if it's come out already, but it's coming out. Um, was the fact that Hezbollah, right, as a non-state actor, was actually sticking closer to international legal norms and itself by only attacking military installations, right? Which is, again, if you're doing self-defense, that's the only thing you can do, is to military targets, not civilians. But all of this is happening to civilians, right? There is no consideration for anything else, right? It's there is no distinction, right, as is required, under the laws of armed conflict, etc., right? So, because of this, it's important. And then you can start at the Israeli military provided no shelter if you want.
No problem. Before we go, Jimp says, Israel has a right, or rather an obligation, to protect its citizens, so it has the right to do what is necessary or required within its own borders. It can't do really anything outside its borders. Yeah.
Right.
These The Israeli military provided no shelter or humanitarian assistance to displaced camp residents. Once forced out of the camps, people were left to fend for themselves. Many sought shelter wherever they could, crowding into the homes of relatives or friends, or turning to mosques, schools, and local charities. A July 2025 Medicine Sans Frontiers report on the West Bank found that the displacement affected communities uh, that displacement affected communities face growing instability and unmet needs, such as access to healthcare and regular food and water. Do you know what that is? I assume it's French. Might not be French.
Oh yeah, you mean the Médecins Sans Frontières? That's
Yeah.
Doctors Without Borders.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought it was I was like frontiers. I was like, what would that be? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders.
Okay.
That's all it is. I also want to note, because since Jemt is bringing this up as well, um, is that the defending party, like even if this were to be the case, right, with the state of Israel, right? Let's, the defending, and I'm quoting now, the defending party must still respect international humanitarian law, for example, including the principles of proportionality and distinction. And I want to highlight this next one, so italics mine, emphasis mine. Self-defense is not a defense for the commission of war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide. So, the state of Israel, no matter what they say, do you recognize that the state of Israel has the right to vote? It doesn't matter. It does not matter whether you think it does or not. It says we already know it can't be used for defense. It can't be used for defense for these things, for the
Yeah.
perpetration of these crimes.
Yeah.
So just to highlight that. And if you want to read the up to the well, just read the rest of 7 and then I'll start on 8.
Yeah. The Israeli authorities also did not take into account the needs of peoples with disabilities, what I was bringing up earlier as the as what would be accounted in the proper accommodations, many of whom were unable to leave without assistance and who struggled to navigate the bulldozed streets and find accessible shelter. And as Jems noted, that uh, the Israeli soldiers didn't seem to care, check anything, where they were bulldozing, didn't seem to care. So people could get hurt. People with disabilities, or just like anyone who might not be there, that might not be able to leave in a uh, whatever the Israelis consider a promptly fashion, which is
Yesterday, like they should have
yeah,
already been gone
yeah, they
essentially.
should have already been gone. Yeah, which is right now. You need to leave. You need to have been gone. Yeah. When the Israeli government launched Operation Iron Wall, it announced its intention to eliminate what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu referred to as terrorist elements.
Also, can I just say, like, again, this is something that is like, even with the reading of drug cartels do not exist, right? Like the language of terrorism is like all of this stuff is like, oh, because of all the stuff that happened, particularly post 9/11, right? They've expanded the remit of uh like everything that like a government could do in relationship to terrorism, right? But the issue is that it's whomever that country says is a terrorist, right? Because that's always the thing, right? It's very spectral in that way, in that there's no way to like the Israeli military can do terrorism, and it does, and it has. So like when it says terrorist elements, that's the reason why people say like, oh well, oh well, they have a standing army and blah blah blah. It doesn't mean anything, right?
Uh,
Essentially that um uh that no matter what they do, right, by saying, oh, well, they're terrorists, right, it does not mean that their obligations are still not there, right? In fact, and I want to just cite here, since I think it's important, the reason why Human Rights Watch brings this up is because this was something that was specifically um, given in an advisory opinion in the ICJ back in 2004. So this isn't a recent thing that they've said that Israel has these obligations and et cetera, and that therefore they cannot use it to justify X, Y, Z. This was done again like 20 years ago, essentially.
Yeah,
So
so yeah, so over 2 decades, this was already been decided from when this right here was published, and from when the stuff is said to have happened.
right.
When the stuff has happened. In here. Also, Jemp notes they tore up the streets of the Brighton Spike on the back of the bulldozers. That endangers the IDF more because it makes it much easier to plant IEDs and also harder to detect them. Uh, which it actually, I think, did I just read about that? No, it's coming up because I was reading a little bit ahead. But yeah, they talk about how well we're just trying to get rid of stuff because they might be in the buildings. It was what it's about to come up, and in the plink and in the streets, and Jim's bringing up, well, what they're doing already is actually making it even worse for them. It's actually making it
Yeah,
even
no,
worse for them for their
yeah,
what just doing this.
right. And not only that, but like I don't want to bring up unnecessarily, so I won't say who I'm talking about, but like even when they like do let people go on when they do raids, right? It's like in many ways they do want soldiers to be harmed, right?
Yeah,
Because then the disproportional, right? Because they use this rhetorical strategy of self-defense, right? To then say, well, that's why we have to respond with overwhelming violence,
it's
even though that doesn't follow, right?
it's like with how America, when one when one person who's like an immigrant or said to be an immigrant does anything bad, it's all immigrants are bad. But well, the U.S. citizens, police, ICE, they can't be the ones doing anything wrong. They were just individuals, But then you have all these extreme stuff happen to these groups.
Hmm. And I'll let you finish if you want to.
Prior to publication on October 15th, 2025, Human Rights Watch wrote to the Israeli military with an overview of this report's preliminary findings and a list of questions relating to its research. The IDF International Press Desk responded by email on October 29th, 2025, and this response is reflected in the report and reprinted in full as an appendix. The Israeli military confirmed their involvement in Operation Iron Wall and said, the operation was based on the understanding that terrorists exploit the terrain and the densely built environment of the camps, which restricts the IDF's freedom of action, and that Hamas plants explosive devices in houses, civilian infrastructure, and along traffic routes in order to detonate them, thus endangering the lives of security forces and local residents. Does it go on? No. Before we continue, I want to say, if they think they have explosive devices in houses, wouldn't just using a bulldozer to demolish the houses risk risk making devices? I don't know how explosives work, but I assume they could be set up in a way
Yeah,
to where that
yeah,
would that would make them explode. So clearly not if you're just using bulldozers immediately.
yeah. I mean, again, like this is the reason why, like when they say, like, oh, like what happened with Al Shifa Hospital, right? And they said, look at these things that we found, right? And even if when even CNN is like, some sketchy stuff happened here, right? Because they're like, why would they put weapons next to an MRI machine,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, okay, yeah, like people have seen like what even just wearing like jewelry can cause, horrific damage to someone's body, let
yes,
alone like a chair or something. But they're talking about weapons, a whole stash of weapons,
yeah.
and it's like all you have to do is just turn it on. They just, all. So yeah, it's yeah,
Uh, Golda Meir, former PM of Israel. We can forgive the Palestinians for killing our children. We can never forgive them for making us kill their children, is what Jim said.
yeah,
And
those
then
infamous.
Jim immediately says another thing after I read that. They actually put weight-dependent pressure plates on their buried IEDs, meaning it would only trigger when a heavy vehicle, like a military vehicle, passes over, not civilian. Yeah, so them immediately using bulldozers after doing this, I assume they're not being from videos I've seen. It doesn't seem like they're being very thorough, and they're not caring, like Jim already pointed out. And so, if there were any IEDs, probably set them off.
Yeah. And so again, that this is why I think that this other article kind of goes really well with this because of the fact that um and so where did you leave off?
We're on page 8 now.
Okay.
Top of page 8.
The is the oh, did you do the response or should I start at the Israeli military?
No, no, yeah, we didn't start the response.
Okay. The response included a link to photographs and videos depicting weapons allegedly found in civilian homes, in the refugee camps, and clips showing alleged fighting between Israeli military and Palestinian fighters in camps. Again, I mean, I just go back to I just go back to the example of like, what's his name? Um, the guy that he's like, here we found a calendar, right? Look at this calendar, Monday to, whatever. No, they said, look at this list. We found a list by Hamas, right? And they're just like, you know, bullshitting, right? Look at this list. It's very, very, true that all of the people here are Hamas militants, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's literally a calendar that says like who's working what day. So make of that what you will. When they say, "Oh, we have photos of weapons that," because who has a lot of weapons all around? I mean, to the fact where Itamar Ben-Gvir, he actually gives out weapons to settlers. So there's weapons all over the fucking place, all over the state of Israel, right, and the West Bank, right, on that Israeli settlers have, right. But they never question their right to own firearms, but a Palestinian's right is always like denied, right? So, so this is just mhm.
Jimped adds. They said it. They said it was the names, the hostages in Arabic. Soldiers are allowed to be
Oh yeah,
treated
that's
for
right.
wounds in hospitals. And also, he before that said, yeah, they use special armored bulldozers to do this.
Right. And yeah, no, that's right. Like there is the concept of hors de combat, right? Out of combat. Once someone
Yeah.
is hors de combat, you cannot attack them. They are no longer they no longer pose any threat to you, right? So when you have look at this photograph, right? Exactly. Look at this photograph. Is that you had the IDF, right? People dressing up as civilians, right? Going into, I believe, was it Al Shifa or was it the Baptist hospital? I don't remember which one it was, but it was at one of those really big, the ones that are essentially like not really functioning anymore. Um, and they went in there and, um, yeah, they went in there dressed as civilians and then started killing people that were there, that were soldiers or whatever they claimed that they were, right? You can't do that because one, they're hors de combat, they're civilians now, right? Because they are no longer active combatants, right? And that's why the usage of the AI, right? The gospel and then uh, Hello Daddy or whatever it's called, the other one, right? Are like it's trying to find people when they're in their homes with their children, right? Hence the name, Hello Daddy or whatever it's called. Um, to then cause their deaths that way, which again they're hors de combat, they are no longer an active threat, right? They are not following the principle of distinction, right, which is something that in international law, as I said earlier, right, means that um that all of this stuff, right, goes to show, right, that there is like intent that can also be read through, even if we were to take this as as a reference by the state of Israel, right? Then that's where the concept that Dr. McDoom brings up, the concept of vengeful intent, right? But when you do the self-defense thing, then that's supposed to negate the idea that this is vengeful intent. But since we know that this is not true, that they are not doing this according to for any self-defense reasons, right? Then vengeful intent is something that can be like brought up in terms of this. Um, the Israeli military did not explain why the displacement of the entire population of all three camps was necessary to achieve its aims, nor whether alternatives had been considered. So again, from its own actions, from its own, uh, its own like spokespeople, etc., they don't explain why it was necessary. Therefore, the displacement was completely illegal, right? And the fact that there were no alternatives, that they didn't even consider one, as far as we can tell, right, also speaks to their guilt, right? Hello, Bad Lefty. Good to see you. Good to see you. Welcome in. The Israeli military, pardon me, rather, it stated that the quote IDF has had to operate for an extended period of time as required by operational needs and the circumstances on the ground, end quote. That is the most vague thing I've ever like. Oh, we have to be there for an extended period of time due to needs and circumstances. Like, what circumstances? What needs? Right? Like, that you have to provide that up front. You can't say like, oh, the IDF works in mysterious ways, right? Like, you can't do that. Doesn't make any sense. The response did not answer Human Rights Watch's questions about whether Israeli authorities had attempted to provide food, shelter, and access to medical services for the civilian population it has displaced, as required under international humanitarian law, right? So even when we were talking about Broadview, right, where they're being denied medical services, all of these other things, right? It's like, this is why, right, uh, like there is a chant that starts from Palestine to Mexico, right? Because of this, right? Like there is a continuity of these similar crimes being committed, right? But again, these things have to be provided to people, especially if they're civilians, because it's required under international humanitarian law. So Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention only permits the displacement of civilians for the security of the population in an area or for imperative military reasons, which is what they said earlier. The Israeli operations actually undermined the security of civilians affected and for the displacement to qualify as a military imperative. It must be so essential that its failure would jeopardize an overall military objective. So, by doing what they did, they've actually proven their own guilt, right? Like this is the only thing that you can really conclude, right? Because the Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention is very, very, very limited reasons why it could ever be understandable. Welcome in, Reference Frame. It's good to see you. And so that is something to also keep in mind. It is not sufficient for the Israeli military to seek to justify whole-scale civilian displacement solely on the basis of possible Palestinian fighters, weapons, or installations in the refugee camps. And that's precisely the thing. Like, the fact that they even try to produce the photos and the videos and all of that stuff is like, that is something that would not warrant the mass displacement of people. That is not how that works. Like, you cannot mass deport, right, a whole bunch of people just because there might be weapons somewhere where those
It's
people live.
it's it's like a police officer in America, uh, going into going into someone's house, finding something like against their wishes, finding something illegal, and then arresting them, and being like, "Well, see, it was justified. We found something." It's not how it works. It's not how it works in it just seems so, I don't know, cause like you said, it's just the possible. It is just that there could possibly be there. It's as from what it's sounding like, it's not like they're getting any information. They found anything out. They they actually had like a reasonable suspicion that there might be um like these quote unquote terrorists in here. They're just going in. destroying these places, uh, and then using the terrorists and all the stuff they in air quotes find to
Right.
justify it afterwards.
Um, yeah, and another thing too that like when it comes to genocide studies that is important to keep in mind is that when it tries to frame this violence, right, that it's perpetrating against the Palestinians as reactive, um, and like righteous, right? Like, oh, we have to do it because we have a moral obligation to, or whatever. Um, what that does is that it is then used, right, to essentially deny, right, any form of solidarity or empathy, sympathy, etc., with the other population, in this case, the Palestinians, right? It's to try to deny them that. And so then they can claim, how dare you question us, right? So we're supposed to be indifferent to the victim, but for the perpetrator, um, you know, it makes the criticism of what they're doing. Um, uh, well, I'll actually give a quote because I think it's a good quote that kind of explains this, and this is from Semelin, Jacques Semelin, from the book Purify and Destroy. I mean, if you were interested in genocide studies, I would say it's probably a good book to read. It's very, very good, very well cited. Um, the political uses of massacre and genocide, which I will have to put on my throne at some point because I need a physical copy. But um, by the way, also, just a quick aside, if you would like to help reach the donor goal for today, which is fine. If you can't, please help yourself first. But there are also books on there, of course, if you would like to help me with those. You know, please feel free to donate by exclamation point dono, and you can go to my Venmo, my Cash App, etc., as well as going to my Twitch page and tipping me if you have need to use PayPal. So to quote, these are not actions of a state motivated by murderous intent, waging a war without limits. They are the actions of a state fighting a defensive war it did not seek, right? Like this is how they keep trying to formulate what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank, right? Literally the Golda Meir quote, right? The Golda Meir quote, that, oh, it's their fault that we have to do this to them, which is the same logic also with immigrants in the United States. Like it's literally like, oh, it's their fault that we have to do these horrific things to them, right? So um under the Fourth Geneva Convention, the occupying power needs to demonstrate, this is something it needs to do before, so a priori, stuff, demonstrate that evacuating civilians was the only viable means, right? And technically this would be post hoc as well, but still, point being that like they have to showcase this, right? They have to show that they thought about this and came to the conclusion that this was all that they could do, right? And we understand that them leaving the West Bank, right, going across the Green Line and going just only staying would actually be, the only way to actually, effectuate any peace at all. However, even had the government demonstrated this, it would also need to show that it safely evacuated the population, provided them food and shelter, and ensured their return as soon as hostilities in the area ended. Again, none of these things are the case, right? They did not safely evacuate them, right? In one camp in Jenin, right? They made everyone go through one gate, right? Like think about this. It's essentially surrounded by a wall. It's like walled off, has very few exits, right? More or less. So that people can sort of think about it in their heads. They're saying you can't leave from any of these exits. You can only go through like this gate, right? And so that means and there's thousands of people, right? Thousands of people living in this refugee camp in Jenin. They all have to get whatever they can as quickly as they can, and then march unarmed, unprotected, all these things next, with soldiers that are essentially pointing guns at them, right? Willing to say anything to, commit even more crimes. So that's the other thing. They did not safely evacuate. They definitely don't provide them with food. And even when they try to say like with the GHF or whatever, it's just like even even like mainstream academics are like, yeah, that's obviously a scam. Like, you know what I mean? Like even people that aren't very you know, um necessarily even like pro like Palestine or whatever in the way how many other people are, right? That are more just kind of like, oh, two states and that's it, no, just peace and everything. Even they are like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, right? So, um, but as we know, when do the hostilities in that area end? Well, it's an occupied territory. So technically, the hostilities should have been over already, and the Israelis should have already have left the territory. So by them saying there are active hostilities and essentially saying we get to determine when that is, the IDF is trying to justify why it continues with these hostilities, right? So if you want to read since the raids,
Yeah. I also wanted to say,
please.
yeah, it's I assume they, because like if the issue was, as they said before, even taking them at the word, well, there's bombs. These bombs are being planted inside buildings, inside the structures themselves. Um, why don't you evacuate the population and check for bombs? Why haven't you tried that, or tried something else? Just like do literally anything else. It's they. I I assume they haven't even ever made any other attempt besides to destroy the homes in which they live.
Right.
Uh,
And to go and to like expand on that just really quickly is that like even if we were to take the frame, right, that they keep trying to use, that does not give them the license to do whatever they want.
no,
That's what they want you to think that is
yeah,
allowed. Because that's why you have people, right, very boxy type people, in particular, try to say, well, they're doing it for self-defense and blah 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 and all this stuff. It's like that does not give you the license to do whatever the fuck you want.
no,
Even if we were going to take the whole self-defense framing, um, because right, what it does is that it tries to um, well, one, it has normative limits, right? Like because the main thing is, and I've kind of already went over this, but I do want to just kind of reiterate this, is that it does not permit the actor to violate the law itself, right? Like, so they cannot commit war crimes because it's like, oh, well, they shot at us, so therefore we're just going to commit, ethnic cleansing. But at the same time, is that even the defending party, right? Like, even the state of Israel, and then in this case, technically Palestine, right? Both of them have the obligations, right, to still respect international humanitarian law, right? But the other thing is that there must be and there must also be another understanding that Dr. McDoom sort of goes into a little bit here that I know I've mentioned before, but there is also this thing where they try to like equivocate, right? Like, well, they did these horrible things, and they're doing the IDF is doing these horrible things, so we can say that this one is worse than that one. That is actually, and I will just quote here because I think it's quote, there must be equal accountability for violations on the part of all warring parties, and charging one party with crimes does not, as a matter of logic, mean its crimes are necessarily equivalent to the other party's crimes. Nothing the Palestinians could do could ever match the massive amount of violence that has been inflicted upon them since, at least if we want to start with the Nakba, right? No, November 1947. There's no comparison. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
um, well, you see, Shakespeare, as Jemp said, it's anti-Semitic to require them to follow international law. You're just, what about their rights? What about, you don't believe Israel should exist? You don't think Israel should exist? It's the I think one of the crazy things that is about all this is how around Palestinians, um, Israel, uh, people in Israel, officials and stuff like that, use the same logic as as white nationalists and like American officials to justify the expulsion of like Hispanic people, um just in general.
Right.
It
And
is
this is
it's
why.
kind of crazy
Mhm.
how similar the overlap is between the two.
Well, yeah, because they influence one another. That's why I tell people definitely to read The Palestine Laboratory, right, by Anthony Lowenstein. Very, very good book. Shows how there's another book that I had a reading group for at the QC that I will restart once we finish Trucker Cartels Do Not Exist. But regardless, no, that's a good point to bring up. That yes, they always use this justification, this type of rhetoric, this type of language, in order to say, and this is why we have to do this horrific thing or these horrific acts in response, which is just But I do also want to just quote, even though I've said this already about international law, right? When I spoke about the ICJ decision, right? Is that, quote, as a matter of international law, an occupying power, which Israel has been formally adjudicated to be by virtue of its effective and long-standing control over Gaza's land, air, and sea borders, cannot claim self-defense. This also goes to the West Bank. There's nothing that Palestinians can do in the West Bank that the state of Israel does not have some control over, right? They can't even use the same roads, right? They can't live wherever they want to, et cetera, right? So, um, since the raids and forced displacement, Israeli authorities have repeatedly and uniformly denied camp residents the right to return to the camps, even though they have no active military operations taking place in the vicinity. Well, look at that. There was no military necessity that they supposedly said that they needed to have, right? That they supposedly said that they needed to do these horrible crimes with, right? Once the moment that hostilities end, that's when you have to start planning for people to go back to their homes. But they instead will destroy the homes, as they will go in a little bit. Israeli soldiers have fired upon people trying to reach their homes. What does that mean in this case? What if they're shooting at people trying to go back to their own house, right? That is using state violence, right, against people in order to mass displace them, right? It's literally a continuation of the Nakba,
Uh,
right?
Before you continue, Jim points out that in the most recent ruling for Israel, they also can't use the excuse of the Oslo Accords.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. As much as certain people love to try to bring it up and be like, well, like this whole thing about like what happened with Clinton in 2000 and everything in 2001 is like they like there was nothing that Arafat could have done that like they just everything was just on this promise that there would be one day us, maybe one day that, we'll recognize you as a state. But the issue as well now is always that the Palestinians have to recognize Israel as a legitimate entity, right? And essentially let it have whatever it wants. Right. And so that's why, yeah, they can't use Oslo. They can't use any of that stuff. To me, I don't think they should be able to use anything because the very fact the UN had the vote on the partition of Palestine is, in my view, illegitimate. Right. Like there is no reason why that land should have been split up in the first place, right? There's no reason for partition, but also there's no reason for settler colonialism. So, and this is again proves that it's a settler colonial project. This is why the Iron Wall, being the name, right, shows that this is related to Jabotinsky. I mean, I have a book that has like a lot of his works in it for Jabotinsky, and it's like when he's talking about this again, it's that they will have to fight, and as he describes them as Arabs, but obviously there is a differentiation between Palestinians, etc. But that's the whole thing. It's like he even said, just like the indigenous Americans, right, fought against the settlers, so too will the Arabs fight against the Zionists, right? Like That's what the Iron Wall is about, right? Is forming an iron wall to get rid of as many people as possible, because colonial logics, settler colonial logics mean only one. There's only one direction for it to go, always. Whether it has a liberal guise over it doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. Um, because I'm sure that people will say, well, these soldiers were just following orders, but really they're really nice people. No, you cannot use. I was just following. You cannot use the Nuremberg response to get away with this stuff. I don't know. So, which, while only very few whose homes have been slated for demolition have been permitted a short window to return to collect essential belongings, the Israeli military has bulldozed, razed, and cleared spaces for what appear to be bigger and wider access routes inside the camps and have blocked all entrances with earth mounds and barriers. In addition, Israeli soldiers have taken up positions inside the camp where Israeli flags hang from the building. So, reading this, what can we conclude is happening with these actions? What is it that the state of Israel is trying to do? You know, I extend this to everybody in chat and everything. Like, what does this mean? Right?
Well, it means that, you know, Israel's right. Obviously, that's what I'm learning from this.
I
Israel has never
Mhm.
done a thing wrong. Has never committed war crimes.
Right, and so from my and also welcoming on Jafari, it can enable manufacture. Yes, right. And that, yeah, that is a beautiful emote, the watermelon Palestine flag. So um, yeah, Catpick says, yeah, Russia doesn't get to claim self-defense on Crimea either. It's not really that difficult. And an illegal occupier obviously doesn't have that right. Exactly. Yeah, there's just no way, um, there's no reason why anybody would try to claim that it was like like its actions that it was doing in self-defense, because again it was claiming it was acting in self-defense of people that aren't even Russian citizens, right? They just happen to speak Russian, which is an accident of history, if anything. um, and not just in interstate matters. If someone kidnaps you and you fight back, that kidnapper doesn't also get to plead self-defense, right? Exactly. This is why the self-defense excuse, which is used in U.S. common law, is something that has very much only been used for people that were going to perpetrate violence already, right? But because someone tried to stop them, they instead want to charge the other person, right? The victim. Um, but yeah, and they also say, Catbig also says, Palestine has to give a total and unconditional surrender first. That, right, like that's how they frame it, right? Then Israel might talk about stopping some of its crimes. Might, right? Like it maybe we'll think about it. Iron Wall and Iron Cross kind of seem the same. Well, I mean, again, these people were inspired by like Prussian, right, like nationalism, and then German national. They were. I mean, like anybody that acts like, oh, this came out of nowhere, right? Just this like long-standing connection to blah blah blah. It's not true. Again, most this idea that like Jews have always wanted to, that isn't a thing. Like that is not true. Like like when we say next year in Yerushalayim, right? In Passover, all what we're saying is may the Messiah arrive, so that way we can go. Because Yerushalayim literally means the place of peace, right? So if there is the Moshiach comes, right, there's supposed to be a reign of peace, right? So at least ostensibly, right? Um, but yeah, just following
Also,
orders is not a. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
gonna say on a serious note, it, from all this, it's like, what reason do you have to block all entrances, not just with barriers, but with earth mounds? Like, what could be the point other than just to not allow these people ever back? Which, as was stated earlier, they have to be allowed back after operations are
Mhm.
over. They need to be. It's once everything's done, once everything's okay, they're allowed back. They can. They need to be um a leg back.
All right. Um, yeah, but and also them planting Israeli flags. What can we logically, right, come to a conclusion on that? Why would Israeli soldiers take positions inside the camp and hang Israeli flag? What are they saying when they do that? What are they doing when they do that? Right?
Uh, they're trying to show that they finally conquested this Hamas military base. That's what they're doing. It's like in uh Far Cry 4, where after you destroy an enemy outpost, you raise a flag with it. You raise up a flag because these are filled with Hamas, as we learned.
Which does not have any control in the West Bank, of course. And let's see here. Iron Wall and Iron Crossing the same, and the one, the Israeli state in particular ought to have a little bit of problem with, right? Yeah, specifically because it's associated with Nazis, right? Um, but I mean, one thing I would like to point out too is like Albert Einstein, Hannah Arendt, like, and I think I've shown it on stream, but like they put, hello Igloo, welcome in, welcome in. So nice to see you. Just give me a second. I want to give Igloo a nice shout out. Please make sure to follow friend of the stream, Igloo. Yeah, I hope that your holiday season is going well. And it's nice to see you here in chat. The problem is that the Israeli state, this is sneaky Psyduck, of course, is that the Israeli state is allowed to hold itself accountable, right? And this is one of the things with the ICC that I have, that I feel, right, is one of those things that it should, and this is something that I think because it doesn't have its own enforcement body, et cetera, right, there's many problems, right? But in terms of legal precedent and all of these things, right, like no country, right, should be able to hold itself accountable if it's for stuff that, goes against international law, right? Like that can only be done by an international tribunal, in my opinion, right? Right, like there might be hybrid courts that could be done, like as was done in Cambodia. There's the concept of universal jurisdiction, but again, it's not something I think that should be allowed. Like if the crimes are this bad, I don't think states should be allowed to, like the state of Israel, should be allowed to say, well, we can just have our Supreme Court deal with it, right, or whatever. Especially when the Supreme Court of the state of Israel came out and said that what they were doing was okay because of the Bible, right, about Amalek, right? Amalek, like literally, like they're citing so they obviously cannot be counted on to be impartial. Yeah, it's colonialism, exactly. Exactly. Okay, you can go ahead now if you want.
Oh, you want me to read the next section?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Within 6 months after the start of Operation Iron Wall, more than 850 buildings were destroyed or sustained heavy damage across all three camps, based on Human Rights Watch analysis of satellite imagery. A report of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, found that all three camps showed widespread destruction in the presence of Israeli military vehicles, roadblocks, bulldozers, and excavators. So yeah, these. Well, I guess they just. It's fine. They don't need to. They actually don't need to return to their homes now. It's fine because some of them don't even have homes anymore. Um, or some of their homes aren't even livable. In response to Human Rights Watch questions about the extensive destruction in the camps, the Israeli authorities said they were acting to reshape and stabilize the area, and that an inseparable part of this effort is the opening of new access routes inside the camps, which requires the demolition of rows of buildings. While the response said that a public notice was issued before the demolitions, authorities did not comment on Human Rights Watch findings that many buildings across all three camps were demolished without corresponding demolition orders. The Israeli military did not answer questions as to whether and when the residents of the three camps would be allowed to return to their homes. Yeah, so even if they quote unquote had demolition orders, some of them apparently didn't. Some of them apparently had none, and then they couldn't even answer uh at whether they would be allowed to return to their homes. Not
Right.
just
Which is something.
not just when, but whether or not they even could.
Right. And again, the whole point is they have to be allowed to come back. Right. And this is something also going back a bit more historically. The United States, at one point, I forget if it was wasn't 242. I can't remember which UN resolution it was, but it's like even the United States earlier on when it voted on things, right? Like it also voted for the right of return for Palestinians and all this other stuff, right? Like it's already been determined that what Israel has to do, right? What the Zionists have to do. And it's like if they don't do this, right? This is why it's important that like I know people say, "Oh, we keep talking about this subject," but it's like these people are the Palestinian people are so oppressed, right? They've been literally just being constantly terrorized by Zionists, etc., right? Having their lives being valued at less than nothing, right? Some might even say like bring up the term like the wretched of the earth, right? For example, but it's like people need to understand that if this is allowed to go on there, it is part of what happens, in the United States, in Western Europe, etc., Australia, New Zealand, whatever, wherever you want, wherever you are, right? Allowing people to get away with this and saying, "Oh, well, it's just how things are." That's precisely how they want you to think, right? Like that's the reason why I think that this article right here, by Dr. McDoom, which is titled "It's Hamas's Fault, You're an Anti-Semite, and We Had No Choice: Techniques of Genocide Denial in Gaza." Right. Like it's always going to be this, right? It's always been this, but it's always going to be this, right? And we see this even in the United States, right? Oh, they keep using the term illegal, 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 illegal. One, there's no such thing as an illegal person. Two, pe- people like us, right? That is to say, intersectional leftists, etc., should not be using the term or the phrase illegal immigrant, right? Like that is my contention, for example. But in the same thing here, we must never allow people to be right cloaked in these terms, right, that are used there not to even dehumanize them, but they're to make it so that these are people that cannot be humanized in the first place, right? Which is something Judith Butler writes about in her book, in their book, Precarious Life. I do think she's any all now, right, if I remember correctly. But I'll use they. So they use only all, I think, or all pronouns are fine. But I don't remember, I don't recall. So I'll just use they for now. Um, and so let's see, where did you, oh yeah, you stopped at excavators, right? And sorry, I was having an issue
No.
with my,
Excavators. Where's that? No, I finished the um. Oh fuck! I fucked up my stream. In addition, we're on the next paragraph. In additional, to international humanitarian law.
oh, here, okay, I can copy it and then put it in the chat. Uh, this is the article they were reading through by Human Rights Watch. Definitely, I'll even put it in the general chat of my server, just so if people want to look it up, make sure to join the Discord. If community nights every Friday. Yeah, of course, of course. Right, and this is why we as people, it's important to have these right. Another thing too is like the academic boycotts, all these other things. Like again, these things that people have said for so long that like, oh, there's no reason to do it or blah blah blah. It's like they obviously do cause something if they have to fight so hard against it, right? That's another thing to keep in mind, right? It's the same thing like with, so you ended at homes, right?
Yeah,
return
yeah,
to their
yeah,
homes?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. In addition to international law, the right of return is upheld in various human rights conventions and has been. Oh yeah, here we go. Um, is it 191? Because it's 242. What's it, 191 or 181? I forget. I think it's 191. The resolution, this one that they're mentioning here. In various human rights conventions, it has been affirmed for Palestinian refugees through the United States General Assembly resolutions dating back to 1949, when the United States did vote that actually they do have to be allowed back. And reaffirmed since then. The Palestinians from Jenin, Tulkarem, and Noshams refugee camps are largely refugees who were expelled or forced to flee their homes during the events surrounding Israel's creation in 1948 in what Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, catastrophe in Arabic, and their descendants. And this is the thing too, like they say, well, how is it that they how is it that Palestinians get to remain being refugees, or that like they act like it's their choice to be a refugee, right? Like they are denied, right, so many rights in other countries, even the ones that border the state of Israel, right? Like in Lebanon, right? One of the reasons why the quality of life in Sabra and Shatila was so low, right, was because they cannot become citizens, they cannot work regular jobs, they cannot own property, blah blah, all these different things, right, that make it so that that's why their children are refugees as well. That's why their grandchildren are refugees, because they are not being purposefully, right, do not do not form, right, a part of the nations that they are forced to live in, right? Like they are treated as another. That's why they're refugees, because they are still in refugee camps, right, seeking refuge but wanting to return, right? So and that's already been protected under law, right, multiple times. Um,
Also, Jimt says that 181 was the partition plan.
oh yeah, 181 was partition, and then what was it 192 then? That was the one that involves the right to return, that the U.S. It's always unsettling when I hear people refer to immigrants as aliens. Yeah, no, because again, that's supposed to literally be that, right? It's a dehumanizing term, right? That says there is nothing that these people have that could ever make them. I mean, even think of the language of the law, right? Like when people become naturalized, like, especially because like I know you read like Bruno Latour, and it's like that, just that idea of being naturalized
Yeah.
as a citizen, right? It's like in theory that should mean you are as equal to any other citizen, whether they came over on the Mayflower
Yep.
or they came, whatever. But no, that's not the case, right? Like that's why this idea of conditional citizens or these other things, right, are things that have been remembered. In fact, some of the books are just the bookshelf I have behind this computer, are things like that talk about this particular thing, like conditional Americans or undocumented Americans, etc. Right? Like, so that's why I prefer to call people that live in the United States that just happen to be undocumented Americans.
Yeah.
Like it's like that guy, the one that he's been here like 30 years, right? Already has kids and everything, and he was at Broadview. It's like it's the same thing here, where it's like these people are, in every sense of the word, are unable to ever become part of the societies where they are living, right? Because they're compelled to live there. That's the thing. They would stop being refugees if they could go back, right? So when people complain, why is it that Palestinians somehow get special treatment? That they're not getting special treatment. They're getting horrific treatment, and the language is there to showcase that.
Yeah.
So displacing some 32,000 Palestinians, descendants of those who were expelled and became refugees nearly 80 years ago, right? So they're being dually expelled, right? They were already expelled from where they lived within the pre-1967 borders of the state of Israel. Now they're being expelled and becoming refugees, right? On another scale, right? Twice over. Has enormous consequences. Each camp resident who spoke to Human Rights Watch said they believed Israel was trying to eliminate the quote-unquote refugee question by removing them from the camps and destroying the camps, and, in doing so, eliminate their broader right of return to their original homes and land in what is now the State of Israel. This forced displacement reflects the broader pattern of ongoing rights violations by Israeli authorities against the Palestinian population, including crimes against humanity, of apartheid and persecution, and I would say also extermination, and that's just all these other things as well. Since the start of Operation Iron Wall, Israeli authorities have not spoken to the camp's residents returning to their homes, nor did the authorities. So again, the people trying to say, "Oh, well, it's just this one guy, it's just this one commander." All levels of the government, just like in the mass expulsion of Mexicans in the 30s, it was all levels of the government as well. Right? Same thing. So I want to hear nothing of this. Well, maybe it was just one bad. All the commanders are bad. All of them are bad. Everything, the whole state structure, all of it's bad. It has no redeeming quality. I'm just going to put that. It has no redeeming quality, legally speaking. Nothing. There is no ground to stand on when it comes to these things. Nothing. Nothing at all. In their October 29th response to questions from Human Rights Watch addressed when they would allow Palestinians to return refugee camps. Instead, Minister in the Defense Ministry, Bezalel Smotrich, who sits on the Security Cabinet and also serves as Minister of Finance, said that if the camp residents, quote-unquote, continue their acts of terrorism, the camp, quote, will be uninhabitable ruins, end quote, and that, quote, their residents will be forced to migrate and seek a new life in other countries, end quote. What does that sound like? What is going on then? If we have the Minister of Finance saying that, what does this mean? Hello, Philippe. Welcome in. Welcome in. What is going on here? Oh, well, you can always just migrate and go somewhere else. What are they doing? What are they doing? Catpick says, undocumented is also very misleading. Many of them have tons of documents, including tax. No, I agree, right? But that's always the thing, right? That it's like when you're trying to find a term that speaks about this sort of, what's it called? Like instrumentalized logic, right? Or reasoning, right? When it comes to things like a green card or a visa or citizenship, right? These pieces of paper, right? It becomes yeah, the only accurate terms are very demeaning, right? Exactly. So it's horrific to think about precisely because of the fact that it's so difficult. Like, this is why there's a wonderful article that says like the Nakba as its own legal concept, right? Like, I think to me that's like, yeah, what else can you call this? Like we keep trying to use words to describe what's happening, but they don't really fit, right? Like it doesn't fit, like as it should, right? Which goes back to our discussion about language the other day, Envy. We didn't cross the border crossed us, and not only that, but like after the Mexican-American War, right? This was part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. They said all the people that live on what is now the United States side of the border, if they live there for over 1 year, they would be eligible for citizenship, which is Article 8 of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, right? They never did that because race was the only factor that was considered when it comes to citizenship back in those days. Right. And in a weird way, that's sort of what's happening now as well. Right. Like I'm not going to say it ever really went away, but there was a pretense of it having gone away. Right. No borders on stolen land, no cages on sacred ground. Right. Exactly. Like there is no reason for ICE to be trying to coerce indigenous nations that happen to be on the border to let them build border wall patrol. No, there's nothing that justifies that. It certainly got less bad for all, right? And that's what I'm trying to say. Like but the thing is like then that only shows, right, that it's a process that's ongoing, right? Like it wasn't the 1930s, right? I mean, like the 1930s, you had the expulsion of over 2 million people, and then you had the interwar period, right? Like, or the Second World War, right? Lead up to the Second World War, same. And then there wasn't anything major for a while until you get Operation Racial Slur, right? Then that's when you know. Do you think that's an accurate term for to describe the United States, Catpig? Catpig is describing the United States as a national socialist country, so that's what I'm asking. Like, do you think that it does sort of fit that frame? Hello, Simon. It's he's a little guy. Oh, well, still, it's good to see you. Certainly more. It's certainly headed that way. Okay. Um. Okay. So, do you have anything you'd like to add, Envy?
No, not really. Not currently. Not right now. Did you want me to read the next bit?
Yes, please.
The raids were carried out against a backdrop of increasing repression against Palestinians in the West Bank in recent years that followed the October 7th, 2023 Hamas led attacks by Palestinian armed groups on Israel. Since then, Israeli forces killings of nearly 1,000 Palestinians in the West Bank, use of administrative detention without charge or trial, and expansion of illegal settlements reach years-long highs, while state-backed settler violence, home demolition, and ill treatment and torture of Palestinian detainees have also increased.
Israeli
Israeli.
authorities have also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. My
Oh, no,
bad.
no, 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 no! You're good. Sorry, I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to say whether or not I had something to say. I was
Yeah, if you have something to say, please do.
I was there was something. Sorry. Still a bit foggy from the fucking being awake for 40 hours yesterday. Um
Yeah, that was.
um but no, I had something I was thinking about it. Now I've just lost it. So, if you want you can just you can continue.
Okay.
Oh, before we go, Jim says US is not Germany. I feel like that's a mistake. Looking to Germany tells us nothing. Yeah. Um it is uh, about America being National Socialist. If there is one thing I do feel like that's kind of a mistake because uh, America is doing its own thing that is uh, uh, unique to it. Um, America isn't necessarily, at least not yet, it hasn't invaded. Well, actually, um, I say that and then remember, Venezuela's they're fucking doing what they're doing to Venezuela. So no, ditch what I say, but I do think there's probably a better way to put it than just comparing it, just because it makes America seem like Germany when what happened in Germany is unique to Germany, and what's happening in America is unique to America. It should be it should be and it should be treated as such, that these aren't the same thing. They're happening in different contexts in different ways, and that they shouldn't entirely be conflated, even if you do draw similarities.
Right. Right. Catpig, let me know if it sounds better, because I don't know. Yeah, sure, sure.
Oh, am I
And
quiet?
yes, if you look, yeah. Also, if you'd like to support me in some way, I put the links there for all those things, for Throne, my Patreon, etc. And so, yeah, if you'd like to help me out in some way, you can always go to them and help me out there, because we do have a dono goal for today. We'll, if we don't hit it, it's fine. Just, it's gonna, be there for a while. So let me just resize this really quickly. Can people read it okay? Or is that feel like it's not fitting very
Also,
well.
before you continue, Karasu says, it is a new form, updated version of fascism.
Yeah, like I think I understand the sentiment that it comes from, though. Like I get what Catpig is
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to say.
It also, it's also, probably a bit more justified than other things.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
just because of the history of Germany taking from America already.
Yeah, like it's crazy to think that it's like it was Americans' usage of Zyklon B on Mexican people that were like, hey, maybe we should try this stuff. You know, it seems to be working so swell for the Americans. And in fact, I think I've mentioned this before, right? Like the one of the worst camps. So Auschwitz-Birkenau complex, right, had multiple camps in it. Like people often think Auschwitz was one camp. There were over 40 camps within the complex, right? And this goes back to also the article you were reading the other day, right, where it shows like they're right next to each other, but they're called different names, but it's like they're all part of the same, right? Because there was like, what was it, like La Palma or something?
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, it's just down the street, so we're gonna consider it separate.
Yeah.
It's like not when y'all are doing all the same thing. Like, so one of the worst camps that existed was called Mexico because they learned from the Americans, right, what the stereotypes that they have about Mexicans. And so that's what they named the camp where most Hungarian Jews were taken to, actually, um, before they were brought to an unnatural end. And so, and it was like horrific. Like they had no restrooms. It had no real insulation. It had nothing. It was like horrific. But anyway, Israeli authorities have also escalated their long-standing campaign to undermine the UN nation's Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East, otherwise known as UNRWA. Um, the UN aid agency, established in 1949 for refugees in the occupied Palestinian territories, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. But I do want to note one thing. UNRWA was actually created because they didn't want the same refugee organization that had helped Jewish refugees after the war, right? After the Holocaust, right? Because they were already critical of what the state of Israel was doing to the Palestinians, to what the Zionists were doing to the Palestinians. So they made it so that, oh no, we can't have that aid agency, you know, work for us, right? Um, for some reason right now its name escapes me. Maybe Jem knows or someone in chat knows, but that's why UNRWA was created. So it was at Israel's behest, more or less, that UNRWA was even created in the first place because they didn't want the same refugee organization because like the parallels have always been there, right? This is why even back then, Hannah Arendt, Albert Einstein, right? They had that op-ed in the New York Times, or that, I forget exactly what you might call that, but essentially it's them saying that the Likud party, right, and etc., that is the new instantiation of fascism. I didn't say that. Albert Einstein and Hannah Arendt did, right, and all these other famous Jewish intellectuals. They said Israel was fascist back in the day, right? They said it earlier on, right, and it's only been proven right and many times over since then. Right, and that's a historical point that's hardly ever brought up. It's like even back then, that even after the foundation, they already could see what was happening. So that's why I find it very weird when people try to like Zionists try to claim Albert Einstein. It's like, he literally called Zion. And I'm gonna. But anyways, in early 2025, laws passed by the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, to block UNRWA from operating in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory came into effect. Since then, Israeli authorities have prevented UNRWA's international staff from entering Gaza and blocked UNRWA, which has been the largest assistance provider in distributing aid in Gaza. Again, this goes from everything from schools to clinics to, even things like accounting, all these things that UNRWA has had to do, right? And yet, one thing that was also important is that in September, they also issued closures of UNRWA-operated schools in East Jerusalem, which is also part of the occupied territory, right? In fact, it's sort of touted as the future capital of Palestine if it were to go back to the pre-67 boundaries. That East Jerusalem would be the capital of Palestine, and West Jerusalem would be the capital of the state of Israel. In fact, I remember Amos Oz. He used to say, like, in his view, like the dream for him would be that he could walk into East Jerusalem and go to the Israeli embassy there, and walk back to West Jerusalem and go to the Palestinian embassy there, right? As if they would be like right next to one another, but in that way. But still. They also issued closure orders for UNRWA-operated schools in East Jerusalem, keeping them from opening in September 25 to the detriment of 800 children, some of whom have been unable to enroll elsewhere. So again, right, 800 children don't get to go to school, right? Whether they live in Silwan, whether they live in wherever it might be, it doesn't matter. They can't go to school because it's an UNRWA school. So they literally can't even go to school.
Denying kids the right to like literally any education.
Right.
Jimp says Jerusalem under the UN partition was to be an international city, neither part of either country.
Right. No, yeah, that's true. In the initial partition plan, just Jerusalem was going to be an international zone, essentially run like by the UN, more or less. I mean, ostensibly.
And then Jim,
That's
adding to what I said, that's a violation of the right to education, and they're also obligated to provide education as occupiers.
right. They have to provide it. They have to allow agencies to provide. The fact they're going after the UN, it's just, yeah. David becomes Goliath, right? I mean, again, I think to me it's like they like to think of themselves, the Zionists like to think of themselves as being like the young David, and they're not, right? They're not at all, right? Because I don't know. I just find using that rhetoric is just very bad. It leads to bad things, like with Titus and such. In its October 22nd advisory decision, the ICJ found that to the extent that Israel does not fulfill the obligations under the Fourth Geneva Convention to provide for the occupied population, leaving that responsibility to the United Nations acting through UNRWA, Israel is under the same positive and negative obligations to support and not restrict the activities of those entities. So, because it doesn't fulfill its obligations, right, which is something Jem just talked about, because technically Israel has to be providing the schooling. They've made the UN do it, and now they're trying to get rid of the UN entity that does it. So that is, again, this is from the ICJ, right, in the case obligations of Israel in relation to the presence and activities of the United Nations, other international organizations, and third states in and in relation to the Palestinian territory, right, from this.
Jimp is also adding, the UNRWA and UN agencies are supposed to be inviolable. Israel or any country can't, under the law, mess with them.
Right. Right, because they have an international mandate to do this.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of the United Nations. So, and then Bad Lefty says collective punishment. No, yeah, it's definitely collective punishment, and it's the reason why, like, we have to be aware. That's the reason why you see people using the language of terrorism to try to, oh, well, now this gives the president enhanced powers. What does that really mean, though? Like, when you think of, what does that really mean? Right? Because it's definitely not to be more compassionate or to, actually try to solve any problem, right? Like any real problem, I should say, right? Like the fact that the fact that like the United States has essentially, I don't even know how to say it. It's bad. It's very bad. The Israeli military actions to permanently alter the camps months after taking control, and presumably long since any military operation to root out quote-unquote terrorist elements, demonstrates an intention to go beyond what is military necessary by carrying out systematic destruction without an evident military threat. The extensive destruction of civilian property, not lawfully justified by military necessity, is considered to be quote unquote wanton destruction in violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention, and those responsible should be prosecuted for war crimes. And I couldn't agree more. Every soldier that has ever partaken in these things, they should be prosecuted for war crimes, all of them, even if they were just the secretary.
Human Rights Watch has verified demolition orders related to the destruction of homes in other buildings across all three camps authorized by Major General Abraham Avi Bluth, commander of the Central Command, and that reflect statements from the highest levels of the Israeli government. Bluth has publicly stated an intention to reshape the camps. Human Rights Watch satellite imagery-based analysis also shows large-scale destruction or heavy damage to buildings without a corresponding demolition order. Beyond the immediate military action taken at the refugee camps, senior officials in the Israeli government have called for the displacement of camp populations for prolonged periods as a policy goal. We will not return to the reality that was in the past, said Minister of Defense Israel Katz in February 2025. We will continue to clear refugee camps. Yeah, making it clear that they're no intention of stopping this, and making the purpose clear. It's not to protect Israel. It is to get rid of Palestinians.
Yeah, that's literally the only thing that they care about is the mass displacement or transfer or remigration or whatever the hell they want to call it. It's just that. And again, it's important that they say that this shows, right, intention. This is they are the ones showing their whole ass, because they always state their intentions, and like the way how Trump states his intentions, right? So they cannot be, oh well, what could I have done? This is why we have to stand up for justice. This is why we, people say, oh, it's ineffectual when it comes to international law, and it's like, if we were to also just allow it to go through, right? Like if we keep allowing the impunity to go through, then other people are also going to be like, yeah, there's nothing you can do, right? To just keep that cycle going. And it's like, no, we have to change things, right? And one of those things is standing up for justice, particularly in Palestine, but across the global South, right, in the imperialized world. And another thing too is like, we will not return to the reality that was in the past. I mean, Israel Katz, right, like when he's saying that, he's essentially saying that the ethnic cleansing of the West Bank is the only thing that Israel is doing, right? That is its only objective. Katz has furthermore called for the permanent removal populations of the emptied camps. So, you left the camp. I guess that doesn't mean you want to be here, is essentially the logic. Saying in February 2025, quote, I have instructed the IDF to prepare for a prolonged stay in the camps that have to be cleared for the coming year, and not to allow residents to return and terrorism to grow again. Again, by adding that last little clause, that's the same thing that you see also with the United States, right? Narco-terrorism, same shit, right? But here, right, it's used as a justification for ethnic cleansing when they have offered no proof, right, that anything what they said is true, just some random pictures, right, of some guy saying Hamas, right, just like that's it. This statement, taken together with the Israeli authorities' response to the Human Rights Watch that referred to reshaping the camps and demolishing homes and other buildings without referencing residents returning, indicates the unlawful intent to prevent the return to the camps even after the end of hostilities in the area as required by international humanitarian law. And I would go further, is that there are no real hostilities ongoing, right? It's only the Israelis persecuting the Palestinians, right? To call it a conflict is to act as though Palestinians have the same amount of power and agency to actually fight against the state of Israel, which has all of the global legitimacy, which has all of the, et cetera, et cetera. So, as an occupying power in the West Bank, the Israeli government remains responsible for ensuring food and health access to the population, quote, to the fullest extent of the means available to it, end quote, under Articles 55 and 56 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, right? So, Israel, we know, has more than enough food, more than enough space, more than enough, right? More than enough of everything, right? Clean water, etc. Water that it's essentially stealing from Palestinians anyway, right? From the Jordan River, in order to house and take care of the people that are under its charge. But we see now why, yes, it's an occupying power, etc., but that there needs to be another step taken, right? Because demanding Israel do something as an occupying power is not really ever going to get Israel to do anything as an occupying power, right? This is why something needs to happen above that. Since early 2025, the Israeli military has apparently done nothing for the populations forced out of the camps. Data from the OCHA, or OCHA, shows that the Israeli authorities increased movement restrictions across the occupied West Bank, making it harder for humanitarian agencies to reach them. So even people that were trying to help, right, that were humanitarian agencies, right, they couldn't even they couldn't even get to them. So they are denying them any form of aid possible. Okay, Envy, you can.
Human Rights Watch found that the Israeli military's displacement of the populations in the West Bank refugee camps in early 2025 were carried out in violation of international humanitarian and human rights law and amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. The Israeli military intentionally and purposely displaced thousands of Palestinians in the refugee camps by means of forced displacement. It forcibly expelled people from their homes using violence and the fear of violence, and at times used lethal force. The Israeli army did not provide safe routes out of the camp and just directed people to leave while at the same time apparently deploying snipers and immediately commencing the destruction of homes. The organized forced displacement of Palestinians in the refugee camps has removed nearly the entire Palestinian population from these areas that for decades and generations has been their home. This is evident in areas that have been razed, extended, and cleared for new and widened military access roads. These areas are now fully empty to Palestinians, and the Israeli government has given no intention that the residents of the camps would be allowed to return.
Again, what else can you call this? Like, what else is this? Right? Like, they literally have created Palestinian free zones in Palestine itself. Right? In the West Bank. What do you call that? You know? I don't know if Jemt or someone has said something or you wanted to add something.
No one said anything yet, at least. But yeah,
Okay.
and people will still argue after all this that, well, the Palestinians, they have all these, they're their own nation. They're their own nation. But all this is happening to them.
Right. And I hate
They're
when
just
people.
separate from the state of Israel, very clearly from all this.
Well, another thing too is I hate when they try to act like because the West Bank and Gaza are not contiguous because of the imperialist powers allowing Israel to take the Negev desert. Is that then they try to act like we have to view them as two separate states? It's like, no, it's divided by an illegal state, right? That is illegally occupying land, right? So, yeah. Forced displacement can amount to a crime against humanity when it is committed as a part of a widespread or systematic, quote, attack directed at a civilian against a civilian population, end quote. Which means the multiple commissions of crimes, of such crimes, committed pursuant to a state or organizational policy. So again, no more, oh, well, it was just this one commander, it's just this one guy, the guy. Only one person has been persecuted since, has been prosecuted, pardon me, since the entire time that Israel has been in Gaza. And what was it for? For stealing a credit card. There is no place on this earth that that people should think that Israel has the ability to take care of, these horrific crimes on its own, right? To try them on its own soil. That's just no. The crime against humanity of forced displacement is defined under the Rome Statute as deportation or forcible transfer, meaning forced displacement of the peoples concerned by expulsion or other coercive acts from the area in which they are lawfully present, outside the limited exceptions permitted under international law.
Also, before you continue, Jim says the threat has to be concrete, so it can't be theoretical threat in the future. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the since the occupation, I doesn't seem like there have been any attacks by any militant groups or anything. So it's like, where's the threat? Where's the threat?
Right. That's the thing, right? There is no threat. The Palestinians are not a threat to the Zionists, right? Like to them as people. Like again, there's no amount of violence that Palestinians or anybody has ever committed against the state of Israel that is in any way commensurate with what Israel has done to them. Like it's like Israel has just gone above and beyond any possible, claim of self-defense, which it cannot claim in occupied territory. Like that's what people have to understand. No matter what they say about Gaza and Hamas and all that other, they cannot claim self-defense in territory that they occupy. So using this language here to expel people to continue the Nakba is, for some people, right, the Nakba is kind of like this distant thing, right, because it happened in the late 40s. But it's like it's still happening now while you're alive, while you can live stream it, right? You can see the Nakba happening, right? Like Jem said earlier, right, that you could see videos of the bulldozers. It's like, we can see pictures of stuff that happened during the 48, 49, and really late 47 as well. But still, point being that like before, like the usual narrative when it comes to the state of Israel is that after it declared independence, that's when 5 countries declared war and started to invade the state of Israel, and that's when the Nakba. No, no, no. The not by April, right? By April 1948, half of the people from Palestine the Palestinians had already been expelled. Half before Israel declared its independence. So this whole thing of self-defense, but it was not a war of self-defense. It was not a war of existential whatever. No, literally, what caused these countries, and Ilan Pape goes into this in his book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. What happened is that suddenly you have all these refugees arriving in Beirut, in Dimashq, right, in Amman, right? You have all arriving at these places, and that's what actually made those countries even do something. Like people like to think of it that like what people hate is the foundation of a Jewish state, quote unquote, which is not a Jewish state. Um, Israel does not in any has nothing to do with the Jewish people whatsoever. In my view, like it has nothing like the state as such, right? That's what I'm trying to say. The state as such, right? But
I
um, mhm.
Before you continue, Jim said, "Find me an actual Zionist in Israel." I don't think they exist anymore. It's just Jewish supremacy.
Well, no, I mean, I would say that that's what Zionism is, right? Which is an extension of white supremacy. That's the reason why it functions just like it. It's just another form of white supremacy. That's all it is. And that's something that they try to use as their reasoning for why they should be given a state, right? The Zionists, right? Well, whoa, again, like Herzl says, we would be a rampart of Western civilization against the, against the uncivilized, right? Like that's essentially what was said. I mean, more or less. Um, so, and then to finish this paragraph here, by expelling tens of thousands of Palestinians from refugee camps. Again, this is refugee camps that they've been living in since at least 1947. So many generations have already, been refugees because they can't lose their refugee status because there is no Palestine for them to go to, right? They can't go back to their original homes. So that's why when people say, "Oh, why is it that they get to have this special status?" They're acting as though it's supposed to confer upon them some benefit, right? Like, oh, it's you know what I mean? Like they almost act like, this allows them to get like no. Here we go. Yeah, Ronald Storrs, the first British governor in Jerusalem, described Israel as, quote, a little loyal Jewish Ulster in a sea of potential hostile Arabism, end quote. And that's true, yeah. Like literally, they're using the language of British settler colonialism in Northern Ireland, right, in order to describe what Israel is supposed to be, vis-a-vis the British and the Americans. A little loyal Jewish Ulster. So, by expelling tens of thousands of Palestinians from refugee camps, dictating the manner of their displacement, and preventing their return for months after military operations ended, Israeli forces, which again, military operations should not be happening on Palestinian territory. That's just nonsensical to me. Like even making it seem as though like what they were doing in the West Bank was like legitimate military whatever. I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong to think of it in those terms. But that's my contention. Um, right? Israeli forces have because like again, a country that can go into the land of another country and commit military operations there, you wouldn't really say that that country is sovereign, right? If they can do that and just go back home, right, on the weekends, right, and complain about how they used to have to be a secretary for the IDF and now they get to do something fun in Ramallah, right? Um, so preventing. Hello, McSecular. It's so good to see you. Welcome in. It's good to see you. Good to see you.
Uh,
Um,
Jim says
yeah,
there's a
go ahead.
reason why the Irish also hate Balfour. It's nothing to do with Palestine.
Yep. No, yeah. I mean, and also like Lord Balfour was also um against the idea, right, that they wanted to put, was it in the League of Nations or was it in the United Nations? I can't remember, right? But I think it was the League of Nations, where they wanted to say that like all humans are created equal, right? Like that idea. And he said, no, we actually can't put that there. Like he was literally did not believe that that was the case.
Yeah.
Like, so he did not want that to be put into law in any way. So again, Balfour of the Balfour Declaration that said that, His Majesty's government sees with favor the creation of a Jewish national home in Palestine. Right? That's more or less a verbatim quote of it. But that's the same man that said, actually, no, all people are not created equal. All I'm saying, I'm just playing, but I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like, uh, and preventing their return for months after military operations ended. Again, I don't think that's the right wording, but that's my own contention. Israeli forces have carried out widespread, systematic, and intentional forced displacement that amounts to crimes against humanity. The actions by Israeli authorities to remove Palestinians from the refugee camps by violent means also amounts to ethnic cleansing, a non-legal term to describe the actions of one ethnic one ethnic or religious group against another ethnic or religious group. I wonder if if this could be applied somewhere else, where
Yeah.
similar things are happening.
Yeah. It's really hard not to just bring up um the the legal case we were reading yesterday. I mean, not yet, Friday.
Hmm.
It's really hard because they are just doing the same thing, doing very not the same thing, very similar things. Um, just trying to get rid of people who are just trying to live.
And again, who are refugees already?
Yeah, yeah, because of Israel,
Yes, because of Israel. That's right. That's right.
they are so now they're double. They are even more refugees because of Israel. They can't even have their refugee camps.
And again, this is something Israel also did in southern Lebanon, right? Like when they were attacking Lebanon, one of the things that they did is they actually did this to a refugee camp in another country, again, in Lebanon. So
Yeah,
even in another country,
yeah.
I mean, again, let alone what happened in Sabra and Shatila, which, you know, just saying, if you're gonna go onto a big famous podcast and use your time on that podcast to try to bring doubt into the perpetration of Sabra and Shatila, I don't know. I don't know what else to think. Uh, just saying. Um, let me see here. If this looks better. Okay. Do you want to keep reading from there?
Sure. Individuals responsible for the commission of war crimes and crimes against humanity can face criminal liability not only in the domestic courts of the country where the crimes took place, but also in international courts and tribunals, as well as in other countries' courts under the principle of universal jurisdiction in accordance with national laws. Under the principle of command or superior responsibility, military and civilian officials up to the top of the chain of command can also be held responsible for crimes committed by their subordinates. Command responsibility attaches when superiors knew or should have known that their subordinates were committing such crimes, but failed to take reasonable measures to prevent the crimes or punish those responsible. In other words, doesn't matter necessarily whether or not uh, someone up top directly commanded it, but if they should have known or knew and failed to take any action um, to prevent this, uh, they are any reasonable measures to prevent this. They are
Right.
they are responsible too. They could be held responsible.
Right. And like that's something that even like in this article they sort of mention, and I'm quoting now, similarly, the rhetorical frame that Israel, quote, had no choice, end quote, operates discursively to erase the existence of viable alternatives to mass killing, or in this case, mass expulsion, right? Which, again, it's kind of hard not to read it to the other article about Broadview, but Israel very evidently and had operational choices in how to respond. Most obviously, and also this is one thing I want to make sure. People keep saying, why doesn't Egypt open up its border? There are like 11 other border points, right? Like border checkpoints, right? That Israel has essentially sealed that they're closed. Israel could open them all up, right? And that's what Dr. McDoom is going to go in to say. Most obviously, it could have opened one of the border crossings and allowed Gaza's women and children temporary refuge inside of Israel before starting its war on Hamas, which again, I don't think that that's the right terminology. Um, and nor do I think that like it should have only been restricted to those two categories of people because there's many problems with that as well. But again, like it has all these other border crossings. They could have opened them all up, but actually construct if they care so much as they supposedly do, right? As they claim to. Why couldn't they have done that? Why is it that they want to shift all the blame onto Egypt for not opening it's one border crossing when Israel has over 11 border crossings that they could set up to be actual humanitarians in that case. And again, one thing that is then added, because I know some people would say, oh, what about the men? Well, then McDoom goes on to say, if we are to believe Israel's intelligence is reliable enough that it knows the identity and real-time location of Hamas combatants to differentially target them rather than civilians, then it should also have been able to distinguish non-Hamas members at the border to allow civilian men refuge inside of Israel as well. It claims to know everything. Oh,
Yeah.
but we can't have, because we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
Either you know or you don't know. Why do you have those two AIs? Why do you have those two AIs? If supposedly they tell you what it supposedly tells you, then you have more than enough reason to. The burden is on the state of Israel. It will always be on the state of Israel. It has to take care of the Palestinians. It is the occupying power. If it doesn't want to be responsible, then leave. Stop occupying the West Bank. Stop occupying Gaza. Leave them alone. Leave them the fuck alone. Yeah, Egypt is big baddie, yeah. Right. And then and yes, another thing too is like this idea that like, oh well, we don't know if it was the high command or blah blah blah. There's a reason why the arrest warrant included Yoav Galant, because he was the Minister of Defense. And he's the one saying we're going to put a total siege, which is illegal. Right? Ein Chashmon, right? Ein Maim, Ein Delik, right? And then proceeds to call Palestinians, horrific things, right? So not only should they face, again, I think the whole like domestic court thing, Israel cannot have by definition is not objective, like its entire legal system, all the way up to the Supreme Court. I mean, if they're literally saying, well, the Bible says Amalek, right? We can do whatever we want. I think this whole thing about the domestic courts of the country, I mean, unless there could be a court that could actually be objective, which would mean it would have to involve the Palestinians as well, that would be the only way. Like, and even then, I would still have many problems with it. But also in international courts and tribunals like the ICC, the ICJ, I think an international criminal tribunal, an ad hoc tribunal, should be created for this, in my personal opinion, and it should be something that is, again, something that cannot just be vetoed by the United States. I think, to me, that has to go. That has to go. And the ICC and the ICJ have to have enforcement authority as well. They have to have some way to enforce these things. That's just what has to happen. The Security Council is completely undemocratic. So,
Jim says, by treaty, Israel has to approve who can cross the Egyptian border with Gaza. Egypt can't unilaterally open the Gaza border crossings.
Right. Yep. So again, they're putting the blame on Egypt. Why doesn't Egypt let them in? Because again, there was that leaked plan that people have brought up where it's like their whole thing was to smush everybody down into Rafah, right? And to then have Egypt open up its border and then essentially let the full population of Gaza, right, to now live in the Sinai Peninsula. Ridiculous. Catpick says ICC rulings are binding on all members. Of course, some, like Hungary, choose to violate their obligations. Right. This is the reason why I'm saying it needs to be given an enforcement authority. It needs to be able to execute the search warrants, to do like things like we live in a world where these entities cannot be depending on one nation state to agree with them or not. That's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Like you already have the reports by the independent, commissions to investigate the Israel and the occupied territories. I mean, it's even in the name, occupied territories. Who's occupying them? The state of Israel. Okay, well then get Israel out of those territories. Stop making it so that, oh, well, would you please do it? Again, that's the problem. It's not even a thing of like the law as such, right? Doesn't help protect Palestinians. It's that even when it does, when it does come down and says yes, Israel has to do these things, it can always be vetoed by the United States, and that to me is one of the things that has to go.
The
Has to go. That's
Jim
why,
says the ICC is called the International Caucasian Court because it only goes after
yeah,
Africans and those in third world countries. ICC can't
right.
be trusted.
And then Bad Lefty says, "Amen." But yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I think an ad hoc tribunal should be set up, and it should not have any. Nor should I would also say this. Here it's saying that these people that are to be held responsible. I also think those of other countries that directly allowed for these things to happen, right, should also be held legally responsible, not just the people in the state of Israel, right? Like to me, that would let so many people get away with what they've done, just by the fact that they happen to live there as opposed to in Israel. Because there are war criminals that are the leaders of industry. There are war criminals that are, the owners of social media platforms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They should have to be held responsible in the same way that, you had the guy in charge of the Sturma and the Völkische Beobachter, like all of that stuff, right? They have to be also held responsible as well. But again, that's what I'm saying. It has to be an independent and binding and something with an executive power, right? With the power to, actually do something and not depend on the eternally vetoing United States, right? To one day come to its senses, because it's never going to. It's just, and again, also the matter of universal jurisdiction. Yes, like people often think like, oh, the United States, right, has this impunity, but technically the United States has laws on the books that is federal, right, and state, etc. Stuff that says like, yeah, like this happened recently with Pete Hegseth, right, where they said, oh, did he commit war crimes against the United States's, right, own laws on this, right? So again, the United States has the ability to try Netanyahu. It chooses not to, right? Right, like if the British could prosecute, pardon me, Pinochet when he stepped on British soil, why is it that there is no country that is willing to try all of the people that must be held responsible for the genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestine? It's just so when people are saying, oh, well, maybe it was a bad commander, or oh, maybe it was a brand new recruit, it doesn't matter. That's what this is also trying to get at, right? Under the principle of commander superior responsibility, if anyone did anything bad, right, and they were commanders and blah, 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 they have to be held responsible. Same thing with Pete Hegseth, right? They said, oh, well, you're the Secretary of Defense. So if they do stuff that's illegal, you're the person that has to take that has to be the person held responsible, right? As the, so would be the Vice Admiral, right? With the destroying of the boats, right? And because they do know, that's the thing. Israel keeps saying we know what we're doing, and Israel will probably just try to act like, well, it's crazy out there. You never know. No, go back to being alone in your box, sir. This is not a Wendy's. So Human Rights Watch research indicates that Major General Avi Blut, as the commander of Central Command, is in charge of military operations in the West Bank, should be investigated for individual criminal responsibility, for war crimes and crimes against humanity, including as a matter of command responsibility, concerning the expulsion of some 32,000 people from refugee camps of Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nur Shams. Right. So this is the guy right here, head of Central Command, which is weird too, because like America has like a worldwide, you know, Central Command being like Europe and like the or being like the Middle East, right? Like when you hear these things, it's like, how could people not understand the United States is an imperialist power if it literally has carved up the world into different areas of its own militaries, you know, um, representation. Um, let's see here. Major, and you can begin with the Netanyahu one. So I know I've been talking quite a bit, but Major Avi Bluth reports to the Chief of the General Staff in the Israeli Army, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, who held this role until March 5, 2005, at which time Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir took over. Halevi and Zamir should be investigated for individual criminal responsibility in these crimes as a matter of command responsibility.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Minister of Defense Israel Katz, and Minister in the Defense Ministry Bezalel Smotrich, who sits on the Security Cabinet and also serves as Minister of Finance, should also be investigated for individual criminal responsibility, including as a matter of command responsibility for war crimes against humanity. For war crimes and crimes against humanity. The ICC Office of the Prosecutor and Domestic Judicial Authorities under the principle of universal jurisdiction should investigate those Israeli officials credibly implicated in war crimes and crimes against humanity in the West Bank, including as a matter of command responsibility. Then from Israel Katz, I instructed the IDF to prepare for a long stay in the camps that were cleared for the coming year and not allow residents to return. Yeah.
For the coming year. So this is the 2025 Christmas gift or Hanukkah, whatever gift you want to say that Israel's giving the Palestinians.
This is the project 2025 I've been hearing about.
Yeah. Investigate first. So authorities should investigate those circled in red, who may have. I think they should not even say may have. They have individual criminal responsibility. So Benjamin Netanyahu, Bezalel Smotrich, Itamar Ben Gvir as well, because he's in charge of like essentially like internal defense and handing out guns to settlers and all this other stuff. Israel Katz, same thing with Avi Bluth, and yeah, all these divisions as well. They should, yeah. Government should impose targeted. No, not targeted sanction. Sanction the whole country, the whole country. No more treats. No more. No. Lo 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 lo. אנחנו לא רצינו הזה. לא. The whole country. Not just specific, the whole country. Whole country.
Yeah, we can't allow Israel to have sugar because they might make bombs.
Yeah, because make
rockets.
Yeah, because some of those sugar cookies are a little bit, spicy. Blut, Smotrich, Katz, Netanyahu, and other Israeli officials implicated in the ongoing mass grave abuses in the occupied Palestinian territory. They should take their actions to press Israeli authorities to end their repressive policies. See, like when they say they're referring to the governments, right? But it's like the veto power of the United States has to be removed. Like that's just one of it. Just to me, the Security Council is anti-democratic, and so it should just be removed. Like if the whole world says Palestinians should be able to return to their homes, and even the United States agreed back in the day, that's. But again, including imposing an arms embargo. No, full embargo, full embargo. No, no, no. Why is it that people are okay with embargoing like Venezuela and Cuba, right? But they're not okay with Israel. No, 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 no. Do this if Israel was held to the same standard as Cuba is. That embargo would never be able to be taken off because of Israel's own actions. Like that's just a fact. That's just a fact. The same conditions that stop European companies, foreign companies from doing trade with Cuba should be the same type of sanctions and same type of blockade, same type of embargo that should be placed on Israel. Not targeted ones. I'm sorry, no. Smotrich, Katz, and Yahoo. No, 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 no. So then what? So then Yair Netanyahu over here in Miami, living practically in the same neighborhood as Destiny, right? Who's like a big like Nick Fuentes fan and everything, right? Like, so then that way he can just get all of the funnel all of the money to him instead. Like, come on, you've got to be kidding me. Suspending preferential trade agreements, no, just banish them. Just no, banish them to the shadow realm. It's done. It's over. It's over. It's over. Not one more day. Not one more day. Not everything embargo. Okay, everything embargo. Everything embargo. All trade agreements, end them, and ban trade in with illegal West Bank settlements. International force, go there, get them out, get them out. They don't want to leave, get them out, get them out, get them out. Everybody's trying to act like, oh, like, why doesn't like, why are they should be able to do what ISIS is doing in the United States to blah blah blah. People might even go to the extent of saying that, right? No, I'm saying go there with all the full legal authority that they have because the ICJ has already ruled on this, and say you gotta go, you gotta go. You got to go. And then try all of those people for war crimes. All of them. I don't care how long these trials last. They could go on for 1,000 years for all I care. I will make it so I attend all of the proceedings. Okay, I will be there.
Jim
and
says,
continue to.
Jim says, sanctions just hurt regular people. Cubans are suffering so bad because of the sanctions. Food and medicine is so hard to get in Cuba, it's criminal. Or well sanctioned, Jim says.
Yeah, Bad Lefty says, in my opinion, the 5 vetoes make the UN next to useless and frankly unreformable. Unlikely they scrap the veto powers unless they scrap the veto powers first and foremost. No, I agree. To me, the Security Council should not be the arbiter of whether or not the adjudication of genocide and war crimes and all these other things should be enforced or not. It should never have ever depended on such a thing, ever. The Security Council should be abolished, and the P5, along with other illegal nuclear powers, should be expelled for their illegal weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, which the fact that Trump labeled fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, that's just ridiculous to me. Removing the veto power, the reference frame says, removing the veto power requires a UN Charter amendment approved by 2/3 of the members and all 5 of the permanent members. No, I understand that. That's why I'm saying, I'm saying this as this is why, even though we have this institution, right, the fact that it does exist, right, is why there should be an independent, the UN is not the end all be all of these types of organizations, right? There will be a better one in the future, right? Ostensibly, right? And so that is my view, that it's we can't just throw out all international law because right now it's not being enforced, right? Or that the ICC is the International Caucasian Court, right? We already have precedent-setting rulings, etc., that are there, and now we have to use those structures and to be able to use them for actual justice, right? But again, that's not something that's going to be fully done tomorrow, right? But it's something that needs to be worked on, because there needs to be an ad hoc tribunal for the occupied Palestinian territories, for Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, and all of the people that have committed war crimes and all these other things and genocide and everything. They should have to face trial, and it should be broadcast worldwide. Worldwide. I would stream that in a heartbeat. Like, I literally will live stream the whole thing. I don't care for how early I have to wake up. I will stream it. Okay. Yeah. And I don't know if you want to keep going on governments.
Yeah, I can totally do that. Government should adhere to the full set of obligations set out in the landmark July 2024 ICJ advisory opinion on Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territory. The ruling found Israel's decades-long fucked my own stream up again. The ruling found Israel's decades-long occupation to be unlawful and in breach of the Palestinians' right to self-determination. The court found that Israel is responsible for apartheid and other serious abuses against the Palestinians, that its settlements are illegal and should be dismantled, and that the Palestinians are entitled to reparations. The court set out numerous obligations on third states to ensure the implementation of its findings, including that they should not recognize any changes in the physical character or demographic composition of the occupied Palestinian territory. It concluded, as it has previously, that all state parties to the Fourth Geneva Convention must cooperate with the United Nations to put into effect modalities required to ensure an end to Israel's illegal presence in the occupied territory. And before we continue, Jim says, the UN General Assembly can act if the SC can't through a Uniting for Peace resolution. It's immune from Security Council veto. Veto.
I would also like to raise another point that I think is important here, since we are talking about these things. And I apologize if I'm talking a lot, but it's just, this is, Article 1, right, Section 4 of the Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions recognizes the right of peoples to use armed resistance against colonial, and I'm quoting now, colonial domination, alien occupation, and against racist regimes. That's in international law. End quote, right? In pursuit of self-determination, right? Importantly, and now I'm quoting McDoom again, and it's just a fact. It's just it comes from the International Committee of the Red Cross, which I've actually gone over on stream before, for their protocols that they have. Importantly, this right is exercisable by non-state actors. It is exercisable even if the militant group does not make its combatants distinguishable from civilians, and even if they do not always openly carry weapons, because the nature of hostilities prevents them from doing so. This has been the case since 1977. So, in other words, what Hezbollah has done, what Hamas has done, would fall under the aegis of this. And it precedes any claim that Israel has ever used of self-defense. It precedes that. That comes first. That has the highest importance. So, but again, even though this is the case, I also want to iterate, right, that this right does not exempt, like, they still have to follow international, they're still bound by it. That's the thing that people sometimes don't. Even non-state actors are still bound by international humanitarian law, etc., the laws of armed conflict. So, if they attack military installations, etc., right? The McDoom also goes on to say, right, Hamas's actions remain unambiguous atrocity crimes, notwithstanding its argument that many Israeli civilians are legitimate targets because of their continuing status as reservists in the IDF. Okay, so that's the thing. They can't claim a general thing, right? If they are like, they still have to make the distinction between combatants and non-combatants. They still have to, blah blah blah, all those things. The weird thing is that you have these organizations, these non-state actors that actually have done things according to international law, as opposed to the state of Israel. And yet, which one of these states or groups, right, is the one that's seen as legitimate in the eyes of the world? The state of Israel. Yeah. Um, we're on the raids, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The raids and displacement at the West Bank refugee camps were occurring while global attention was focused on the devastating hostilities in Gaza, where Israeli authorities have carried out ethnic cleansing, war crimes, crimes against humanity, including forced displacement and extermination, and acts of genocide. So here it is. Let no one tell you, oh, well, oh, well, maybe it's just a few bad. No, no, no. They use the genocide in Gaza and the attention that's getting in order to do ethnic cleansing of the West Bank. That's why they keep prolonging it. They don't want the war to end. The Israelis don't want the war to end. They want it to keep going because that way they can solve, as they said earlier, right, the refugee problem, right? They want to get rid of all Palestinians, right? Exactly. That's what people have to have in mind, is that again, here we have Human Rights Watch saying, look at all these things that they are guilty of. Therefore, right, this means that the military has to be investigated, the Shin Bet, all these things have to be investigated because they are committing acts of genocide in one part of Palestine, of at least the one that's recognized by the UN, and then ethnic cleansing and mass displacement and forced deportations on the other. So far less attention has been on Israelis' authorities' serious violations of international law in the West Bank. With the new Gaza ceasefire in place and the global focus on avoiding a return to hostilities there is a real risk that Israeli authorities will be given more of a free hand in the West Bank to continue targeting refugee camps, escalating grave crimes against Palestinians there. Governments should urgently act to end the forced displacement of Palestinians and ensure their right of return and prevent further repression of the Palestinian population. Did you want to read their recommendations, or did you want to go deeper into the report, or?
Uh, how long are the recommendations? Is it that long? No,
No, it's pretty
it's
short.
only 4 pages. We can go or not even 4 pages. I think it's actually like 3 pages. Yeah, we can go into the recommendations.
Okay.
Uh,
Sorry, I don't mean to be scrolling back up and down on my end. But also, just to remind people, if people would like to help me out in some way, please, please, you have the links in chat, in both chats, YouTube and Twitch. Our donor goal, which still is 0, which is it's fine. But if you can, send something my way to help me out, please do so. I would appreciate it. And yeah. Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, the rogue state that wants to get rid of everyone else in the areas it occupies or intends to occupy. Right, exactly. Exactly. Okay, I'll leave it to you to.
Recommendations to the Israeli government: immediately stop forcibly displacing Palestinian civilians anywhere in the occupied Palestinian territory. Publicly declare that all residents of the 3 refugee camps of Jenin, Tokarim, and Nashams will immediately be able to return to their homes in places of origin. Halt the demolitions and razing and bulldozing of buildings and creation of new roads in all the refugee camps that make permanent changes to the territory. ensure that the humanitarian needs of displaced civilians are met, including food, shelter, and healthcare, in accordance with the Fourth Geneva Convention, recognize and fulfill the right of the Palestinians to return to their homes or areas of origin in the West Bank, other parts of the occupied Palestinian territory, or Israel. Set up fair, accessible, independent, and gender competent mechanism to provide reparation for gross human rights abuses against Palestinians from the refugee camps, including compensation, restitution, justice, and guarantees of non-recurrence. Ensure that victims' rights are central to the process, and victims themselves, including full participation by women, play a key role in designing the process. This should include compensation for any forced displacement or unlawful destruction of property. Immediately grant access to the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel, and the special procedures of the UN Human Rights Council. Accede to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, cooperate fully in the court's investigation, and cease coercive measures against human rights groups and others advocating for justice before the court. And then I don't know if you wanted to read the next one.
Yeah, I'll read the next one. But I do think just to sort of say, oh no, go ahead, please.
I was before you went on, I was gonna say, when it said the to stop just to like stop the demolition, I was like, well, what about the people who did lose their homes? And they have the one where it's like, oh, reparations for that, which I assume would include stuff like that. And so I was like, that was something I was worried that they weren't gonna say, be like, oh, well, the people who don't have homes are just kind of like not mention that people's homes have been destroyed.
To me, on the state's dime, Israel should have to rebuild all of the houses, all the ones that it destroyed during the Nakba in the 40s, all that stuff. It should have to do it. The house is not there, build it for them.
Yeah.
That's the only thing the state of Israel can do. I don't care how much of its budget. The Americans have no problem giving all this money. Well, hey, go design some cool houses and give it to the Palestinians who deserve it, who have earned it, who need it. That's the only restitution that I could even think of when it comes to housing. All those villages that Israel, made into nature reserves to essentially have them be as ruins, to just erase the fact that they were there. Nope. Build them their houses.
Yeah.
And they have to have equal rights or nothing. Yep. Otherwise, the state of Israel has no legitimate reason to exist. There's no such thing as having a ethnic supremacist state and being democratic. Those two things are impossible to be. Like, they are non-overlapping magisteria, so to speak. So to all governments, publicly condemn Israel's forced displacement on the civilian population in Jenin, Nur Shams, Tal Karm refugee camps as violations of international law by Israeli authorities. I would say urge is not good enough. Make the Israeli government to immediately halt those violations, allow all Palestinians displaced to return to their homes, and provide them with compensation for damages. And if they destroyed the home, you're building it again. However they want it. I don't care. I don't care if they want 10 bedrooms and 100 bathrooms. You're building it for them. That's it. That's my view. Build them whatever house they want. Whatever house they want. Israel has built enough stupid strip malls with Castro clothes all over the place. No, build them their houses back. That's me. And can compensate them. I don't care. I don't care if the living standard of Israel goes down and no. You build them their houses. You treat them like human beings. That's my contention. Cooperate with international judicial bodies and investigate mechanisms investigating the forced displacement of the refugee camps, and hold all of those people responsible. All of them. I don't care if they are just a grunt, right? Just a private, or all the way up to the Minister of Defense. No, all of them. Court now. They did something. They have to be held responsible for what they did. Okay, justice. If they really care about justice and freedom and democracy, blah blah. Okay, well then we have to do that, and that includes you too, Hila. By the way, I don't care that secretaries and count as well. So, increased public and private pressure on the Israeli government to stop violating international humanitarian law and international human rights law and fully comply with its obligations and the binding orders and advisory opinions of the ICJ. Again, I don't care, right? If you want to go rah, send your troops somewhere, send them to Israel. Make them have to do this. Make them have to do. I want to see Bezalel Smotrich laying bricks for a Palestinian's house. That's what he should be doing. Not be flying around to all the capitals of Europe to support other racist supremacist projects elsewhere. No. No. Publicly support and provide funding for UNRWA and oppose the Israeli government efforts to restrict its work. Its funding should only be able to go up. It can only go up. It can never be reduced. It can only go up. And no, like I said, you can't allow the Israeli government to really do anything. They literally, all they can do is just build people houses and give people restitution. That's it. Gold-plated, limiting to 20% of indoor surface area, right? Yeah, don't make the same mistake Europeans made and just grant amnesty plus amnesia to all the mass murderers, right? Exactly. Like, no. I don't care how long these things have to last. If Israel didn't want these things, why did it commit these crimes? That's the thing. They did the crime, they have to do the time. All of them. All of the people that have committed crimes. And again, they should be consecutive sentences, not concurrent ones, consecutive. I don't care if Netanyahu is going to be in prison for over 9,000 years. Doesn't matter. It does not matter to me. That is the only way to uphold justice, is by having it actually take place. That's the only way. You cannot just support or urge or whatever. No. You make the Israeli government recognize the rights of Palestinians, including refugees, to return to their homes. And if they destroy their homes, they will build their home, however they want it, in whatever place that they want it, it's theirs. Okay? They've already stolen all of the money that was supposed to go to Holocaust survivors, right? As elaborated in Norman Finkelstein's book, The Holocaust Industry. They can build the houses. They can build the houses. They have more than enough money. How was Natan Sharansky over there in Ukraine when hostilities broke up between Russia and Ukraine? Well, he's an ambulance chaser. That's all he was doing, was trying to get people that aren't even religiously Jewish, that are already converted to Christian, just so then that way they can all move to the state of Israel. No. Him too, in the dock, all of them. All of them, all the ones that were there smiling, shaking hands with them too, they all got to go in the dock, all of them. I will attend every session of every single trial, myself if I have to. Call upon the Israeli government to grant access to an independent international monitors and also an international criminal tribunal, and arrest them wherever they set foot. Okay, their nasty ass feet. No, jail, straight to jail. That's the only way. Including the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel, and the special procedures of the UN Human Rights Council. Impose targeted sanctions. Again, these don't work. General sanction, blockade the country, embargo it. Hold it to the same standard that the United States holds Cuba. If it did that, Israel would give up its sovereignty in a week. Because if they can't have their switch 2s and their Bamba chips or their whatever the peanut things, right? They'll give up. We still prosecuted Nazis here nearly 80 years after the defeat, although by now it's just symbolic. Of course, it's noteworthy that we waited until the perpetrators are too old to jail, and even then a few that aren't dead. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if the dude's 120. Put him in the dock. 9,000 years, that's 9,000 years. 9,000 years, it's 9,000, that's it. Whatever amount it turns out to be, right? Hold them all responsible, all of them. Gila, Ethan, all of them. All in the dock, all of the propagandists, all of them. Each and every single one of them. I don't care how long these proceedings will last. The world will never know what justice is until things like this happen. That's my contention anyway. My contention. Yeah, the entire top and middle leadership at least should be taken to The Hague to await trial. Lower suspects can be prosecuted by an international tribunal in Pesant. Right, exactly. I think to me that would be best. There should never be given any impunity to any state in the way that Israel has had since, even before it was created. Even before it, no. And we should be completely against any form of apartheid, supremacist types of government in the entire world. Any government that purports to be this way, no, it's over. It's over. You're done. Straight to jail. Straight to jail to await trial. That's it. Or simply by a Palestinian tribunal in Palestine with international assistance. Right. If they want to have a hybrid tribunal, like they did in Cambodia, they can. But it has to be run by the Palestinians. By the Palestinians. And all of the judges that said, oh, yes, Israel can commit genocide because the Bible, no. Religious extremists, no. I don't care if they shave their beards and dress in nice European clothes. No, straight to jail. Straight to jail. I don't care. And foreign leaders who materially aided Israeli state crimes can join the Israeli leaders in The Hague. Yeah. Merz, Keir Starmer, all of them have to be tried. All of them. And they should be treated the same way how criminals are treated in their own country. Okay? The way how ICE treats people in Broadview, that's what Pete Hegseth should be expecting for himself. No pampering. No more of this, we have to, no. They are war criminals. Treat them like that. You would not want to have Nazis in your home. Why would you allow essentially Nazism with the Star of David, right, to suddenly be acceptable? It was never acceptable. Even Jewish people at the foundation of the State of Israel said this is fascism, including Albert Einstein, including Hannah Arendt, including lots of other Jewish intellectuals and people. So if even then they knew, all of them have to be held responsible. All of them. Even if it has to be in absentia. And if they put one stinky ass toe in any other country, arrest them right away. I don't care. Take away all of their wealth, take away all of this. No. The way how you were fine treating other people, again, Rabbi Hillel tells us, right? Don't do unto others what you would find hateful unto yourself. The Jewish golden rule, which is negative, not positive, right? It's a negative thing. You didn't want these things to be perpetrated against you, then why did you perpetrate them? You have to be held responsible. Especially since they love to bring up Talmud, HaTorah, and all that stuff. No. Where's their religious Zionism when it comes to them being held up to the standards of the Torah? לא. אנחנו לא רוצים הזה. זה לא המשפט. That is not justice. That is not justice. So again, travel bans, asset free. Take all the assets. Give it all to the Palestinians. I don't care. Benjamin Netanyahu should not be able to have an investment portfolio against Israeli officials and other credibly implicated in other ongoing serious abuse. This includes streamers, by the way. Destiny, straight to jail. Lonerbuck, straight to jail. Especially because you went on Ethan's show just so that way you could deny the Sabra and Shatila massacre. I heard what you said, including Prime Minister Netanyahu, all of his family too, because we all know what Yair is all about. Right, the Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, and all former ministers of defense. If there was any person in the government of the United States and all the other that helped abetted the occupation and the continuing ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinians, straight to jail. All of them. All of them. Freeze all their assets. All of them. Minister of Defense Bezalel Smotrich, Ben Gvir, Avi Blut, does not matter to me. אנחנו לא רוצנו הזה. אנחנו לא רוצנו פשיזם. אנחנו רוצנו המשפט. We want justice. Not לא ציונות. משפט, לא ציונות. Justice, not Zionism. Suspend military assistance and arms sales to Israel so long as it forces commit violations of international. No, they have. They should have no military. No military at all. None. Not one. I should never have to hear the phrase Israeli soldier ever again. No one should have to. Suspend military assistance and arms sales so long as its forces commit violations of international law with impunity. No, they have existed with impunity since before this. So therefore, their armed forces are illegitimate. Them existing is a violation of international humanitarian law. Take it away. It's over. It's Jover. Enforce domestic legislation in limiting the transfer of arms and military assistance for violations of international human rights and humanitarian law. No. This has to go beyond all of the countries in the world. If they want to truly say, oh, we're for democracy, we're for justice, we're for this, we're for that. No. You take those weapons away from them. There should not be one Merkava tank, not one, existing. Not one. And no more Uzis, no more, no more Galils, no. That's over. That's over. It's Jover. Also, investigate, appropriately prosecute those who credibly implicated in war crimes and crimes against humanity stemming from Israeli authorities' operations in the West Bank and Gaza, right? But in the West Bank since January of this year, under the principle of universal jurisdiction and accordance with national law. Again, U.S. court should be taken there, and they should be treated just like everybody else. If they did not want to do the crime, why did they do it? לא, אנחנו לא רוצנו הציונות. אנחנו רוצנו המשפט. That's the only thing that we want. Justice. Justice. All of them. Prosecute all of them. And if they're found innocent, fine. If they're found not guilty, fine. But Netanyahu is not guilty. That's for fucking sure. Suspend preferential trade. No trade. No trade. Full embargo, full blockade. That's the only way to go. This is too soft on a country that has committed so many atrocities and has helped the Rwanda genocide, etc., etc., etc. It goes on. The list goes on. The list goes on. As long as the Israeli government refuses to comply with their obligations that are lined out in the ICJ rulings and advisory opinions and continue to commit serious abuses, including the crimes against humanity of apartheid, persecution, forced displacement against Palestinians, against anybody, Syrians, Lebanese, Jordanians, I don't care. No trade. No more trade. No more. No more. No more treats for Zionists. No. Yeah. Lo. We don't want that. Lo tzionut. Ken mishpat. Publicly express support for the international. No. The International Criminal Court is binding on all parties. All parties. I don't care. I don't care who it is. I don't care what country you think that shouldn't be. No. You're all under its jurisdiction. You all will be tried. All of it. And not just condemning efforts to intimidate. No. Arrest the people that are trying to intimidate the ICC. All of them. Oh, they want justice? Okay, well, you will get your justice, including coercive measures against court officials and those cooperating with or seeking justice at the court, and committing to support the execution of all its warrants, all of them. And there must be more made. Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant are not enough. Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Two Nice Jewish Boys podcast where they were talking about a button to get rid of all Palestinians. No. Behabayit hamishpat. Now. That's the only way. Yalla. No. Address root causes of grave abuses, including by recognizing Israeli authorities' crimes of apartheid and persecution against millions of Palestinians, both past, present, and future. They have to all be held responsible. The state of Israel has to be dismantled in one state with equal rights for everybody. No more of this, oh, fertility rate. No, no, no. Shut up about that shit. No, shut up about that. I never want to hear people talking about fertility rates, birth rates, but I don't give a shit. No, you're never going to do that. No racialist ideologies allowed. No more. It's over. The Jewish people, of all people, should know that the nation state has only led to horrific things. There is no reason why we should still think that that is the basic unit that every country should want to be at the end of the day. No. Lo. Lo, 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 lo. Lo Hamedina. Lo. No. To the International Criminal Court Office of the Prosecutor, and then I'll let you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on, didn't mean to pop off. I just,
No, you're fine.
this is a little too milk toast even for me. Like, to the International Criminal Court Office of the Prosecutor, investigate war crimes and crimes against humanity or forcible transfer during Israeli authorities' forced displacement. Other unlawful conduct and operations in the West Bank since January 2025. No. Since 1947. 1947. I literally want Ben Gurion to be understood for who he was. People should be ashamed of having photos of Ben Gurion and Herzl and all the other ones, and even Jabotinsky as well. All of them. Lo. Nope. That's done. Going all the way back. Investigate the individual criminal responsibility. Because again, when we went over Tantura, they had no problem confessing to all of their crimes. Why? Because they had scared Benny Katz into signing, forced him into signing a thing that said that, oh, I retract all of my stuff. Because they kept bringing that, all of those. So, oh, I don't know what happened on the day that we were all in Tantua. I just know that we went swimming afterwards. But they all definitely remember Teddy Katz saying, okay, fine, I give in. And ruining his life. I don't care how old they are. Walkers, wheelchairs, those all people of all ability are able to go into court. So I don't care. If it was Tantura, whether it was Yer Dassin, or whether it was, the first settlements out in Ariel, Shiloh, no, all of them. All of them. All of them. They knew this was wrong. They knew this was wrong. And they still did it. Because of supremacist ideas. No. That cannot happen. Investigate individual criminal responsibility or command responsibility of Israeli officials for war crimes and crimes against humanity, forcible transfer. No, of all levels. All levels. If people were willing to take the accountants, right, who were accountants at Auschwitz, etc., right? Like, at least that's the case that comes to my mind. Maybe I'm forgetting what he is. Secretaries too. Board secretaries that wanted a little bit of adventure in their life. Straight to the dock. Especially because they haven't stopped propagating, right, hatred. Yeah, the truth is right. Sorry. Yeah, you got my vote. Yeah. Straight to jail. Don't pass go. It's just don't collect $200. Sorry, I didn't mean to just pop off, but oh gosh. Treat them like human beings, right? Imagine. It sickens me the lack of action, says Planet. Same here, same preach, sis. Yeah, exactly. From Shakespeare's mouth to God's ears. Straight to jail, don't pass go. Yeah. We aren't actually a state. We don't have to do all that, right, Israel? You got my vote. Speak your truth, Queen. Or I should say the truth. Amen. The truth is right. Despicable. It aches my heart. I wish we had real justice. We will have real justice. Everybody that's here in both of our streams that want justice, we are the people that will bring about real justice. Don't ever let yourself forget that. Justice is not a blindfolded woman on top of the Old Bailey, which actually isn't blindfolded, but you know what I mean, right? That isn't justice. Justice is us. Is us. Never letting these people get away with this. Never letting people get away with this. Ever. As long as we remember, as long as we continue standing up for justice, that is the only way that true justice will ever come about. That's just a fact. It's just a fact. There is only one human race. Fertility rates have been going on. I know exactly. Independent of religion, Jabotinsky was pretty Yeah, he was. He was. Yes, inshallah. Inshallah. Again, there is no reason why a supremacist ideology should be allowed for any state in the world, let alone Zionism. Okay, I'll leave it to any else. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Don't worry. You're all good. So I'm just letting you speak. To UNRWA. Abolish the discriminatory patrilineal descent requirement for UNRWA refugee status that excludes from refugee registration the descendants of women who qualified or qualify as Palestine refugees under UNRWA's mandate, but whose husband did not or do not qualify as refugees under UNRWA's mandate. I didn't. So is this saying that the husbands couldn't get access? Is that what this saying, or is it saying that both of them
Yeah.
couldn't get access?
No, it's like um the way how it was like if someone married someone that wasn't like a Palestinian, let's say, right? Like, oh, she married a Jordanian man.
Yeah,
They would say, oh, well, we only do it through the father, which is literally, I'm not even joking, literally like racist ass shit from like the colonial era right here.
yeah,
Because it's about blood, right? And it's them saying Jews are determined by their mother, Palestinians are determined by their father.
yeah.
No. If Israel is, and they love to broadcast this, if they love saying we don't care which side of you is Jewish, come to Israel to make aliyah, right, to become a colonial settler, then the same should apply for Palestinian refugees. Oh, we don't care which side of yours of you is Palestinian. You're Palestinian. You get all of the restitution, 100%, if not more, 1,000% for all I care. But yes, the registry has to be so that even the matrilineal descendants of who are themselves refugees also get fair compensation.
Oh, so that's the end of the recommendations section. I just realized that's the last thing.
Yeah. You know, they are saying by that logic that North Korea is actually the best state in the world, right? Because ethno-state isolation from everyone else. Again, like if that's what Israel wants, then that's what Israel will get. Like, oh, you mean that you expected to be treated with kindness and sincerity and all these other things? Well, you sure didn't show that to anybody else. Why is it that they love to bring up Rabbi Hillel, Gamaliel? Why is it that they like to bring up all these people when it comes to justify their atrocities? Again, they are the most anti-Semitic ass people I've ever known. They hate Judaism. They only use it as a shield. That's the only thing they do. And they have said, right, that oh, when anti-Semitism goes up into the world, right, goes up in the world, that then that makes Israel, right, the place where then people are going to. When they've coerced governments historically, right, when the Zionists have coerced governments to only allow people, right, like with Morocco, most Jewish people have never wanted to immigrate to the state of Israel. Most of them wanted to go to Western countries, in Europe, etc. Moroccan Jews wanted to go to France because it was still a French colony. They didn't let them do that. Instead, they made the Sephardic men do aptitude and fitness tests and all these things, so then that way they could have them move to Israel and work in their fields. That's the only thing they saw Sephardic Jews as being capable of, as being beneath them. So no, I don't want to hear it's a Jewish. It is not a Jewish state. There's no such thing. No such thing. That is a supremacist state that is by far one of the most anti-Semitic places ever to exist, and it should be abolished. One of those Israeli cabinet terrorists, like the ones that were convicted by Israel itself, falsely claimed that assaulting Palestinians is a sport for Jewish kids. Yeah, that's That's just ridiculous. Oh, that's just disgusting. Like, to say that. Again, these people, all they want to do is to spit on the Jewish tradition. The Jewish people have a right to be free from Zionism. And I claim that right. Lo tzionut. Ken mishpat. That's it. Okay. Sorry, again, I don't mean to keep helping. Was
You're all
not
good.
expecting.
You're all good. I didn't know if you wanted to continue to somewhere else in it. I assume you didn't want to go over the methodology.
Yeah,
Um,
I would. Let's see.
oh wow, we've been going for fucking 3.5 hours. I didn't realize that.
I know. I know. It's because I keep popping off and being like, let me quote this, let me quote that, and also, we want justice. If you want, we can finish this another day if we're already running late or running too long. But also remember that they're not only for me, but also for Envy. If you would like to support us, both of us have the link so that way you can help us out. You know, again, my donor goal is $100. I think you need like a $90, right, to hit your donor goal. Please, by all means, go to Envy is political.
Literally,
And
it's so fucking perfect. I got the exact fucking at. So it's literally I'm the channel. I'm the thing that pops up whenever you type that.
yeah, no, it's same with me. I got Shakespeare, like the exact
Yeah,
spelling that I use. So,
so perfect.
but yes, if you'd like to help us out, please, I urge you all to if you can, take care of yourselves first. If you have anything extra, only then consider it. But yeah, I don't know if you want to continue or if you want to leave it off here. Because I was thinking we could start on page 28 on Operation Iron Wall, where it actually goes into it.
Oh,
That's right, bad looking.
I keep getting so confused because the PDF page numbers and the actual page numbers are out of sync, and so I'm like, page. I was on page 28 and I was like, am I stupid? I was on page 28 of the PDF and I was like, am I stupid? I don't see it. I'm like, oh, it's because I remember different page numbers. Let's see. We should probably stop here for today, just because
Okay.
I'll probably have to go soon. But yeah, no, this was good. I'm excited to finish this along with the the um uh, the legal case about Broadview sometime with you. Very excited for that.
I promise I will not try to pop off on them.
No, you're all good. No, you're all good. I completely understand. No, I don't mind. Uh, a lot of it has been um helpful to me because I don't necessarily know a lot about all this stuff, so it's also been helpful to me. Um, most of your popping off has been bringing up stuff that I feel is very much relevant. Um, like only like for the past few little bits have you really been going off on anything that was just like about anything other than bringing up um more explanations of like the stuff that's been happening. So you've been you've been popping off, but most of it I don't think you can say any of it's on topic, but like most of it has been just like you educating about you like explaining very much educational stuff. So you're all good.
Okay. Okay, well then again, yeah, righteous anger and indignation. Yeah. Well, thank you so much everyone for joining both of us for this stream. I look forward to continuing this. So hopefully y'all have a hopefully you have a good rest of your day, and yeah, I guess I'll see y'all later.
Same for my stream. See y'all later.